regular board meeting for the Milford Exempted School District to order. So why don't we call the roll, Mr. Red?
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Here.
Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag All right, let's move forward to the approval of the agenda. I need a motion to approve, please.
So moved.
Second.
I would like to make a motion to amend the agenda.
We need to wait until after we've approved the
Oh, okay.
agenda.
I thought we did.
And then you do that.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion? Call the roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to make a motion to amend the agenda to remove item G3D2 and add it as an agenda item as G11A1. And then also to make a motion to postpone definitely to one of the next meetings, voting on agenda G11A1.
You have to allow me to catch up here. So you try that one more time for me.
Okay. I'd like to remove G3D2
Okay?
and add it as G11A1.
As G11A1. Any other, Mr. Red?
Got it.
Okay, I need a second.
Second.
Discussion?
I mean, if you want to discuss it, I just feel that it is premature to vote on this right now with other circumstances currently going on. So I would like to move it and postpone voting on it.
Okay. Typically, we do not vote on remove one individual and vote on them separately. We vote on them as a block.
Okay.
And if you're typically in disagreement, you vote no on the block.
Yeah, that's what we
Well,
discussed.
I'll just say what's typical and what is allowed are two completely separate issues. We have voted on a singular person and sometimes two and three many, many times in this room. So the request to postpone it as an individual is not out of order. It's actually in order, and I think it needs to move forward as a vote. And that's how I feel about it.
Any other discussion? So, a yes vote removes this to a separate item later in the agenda.
Removes and postpones, correct?
It postpones.
How did it go into 11? Then I'm a little confused.
Mrs. Nolan made a motion to move it to agenda item G11A1 and then to postpone item G11A1, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I'm trying to keep up here. I apologize.
No problem.
So we are voting to displace
Remove
one
an
person.
item, put it in another place, and then postpone that new place.
Is
Correct.
that two motions or is that one?
We can do it under one.
Do it under one? Okay. Seeing no other discussion, call the roll.
Mrs. Mason?
No.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
No.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
No.
President Miranda, I would like to make another motion. I would like to add an agenda item to D1. I motion to uphold the recommendation of the committee that reviewed the novel In the Time of Butterflies based on policy KLB and was accepted by the superintendent, that the novel continue to be part of 10th grade ELA curriculum.
I second that motion.
Discussion?
Do we want to have the whole book discussion now? Like the whole D
No,
discussion?
we're
now, or
talking
just-
about the
Because I'm
agenda
gonna-
items.
Whether the agenda is changed.
Okay, I mean, I would still like to discuss the book.
Yeah, when it comes to agenda item D.
Yeah, when it gets to D, we will
Okay.
do that.
Correct. Yeah, right now, you're just adding it to the agenda.
And we're
And
adding,
then
we're
later
adding a
on.
vote to that agenda.
Correct. You're not voting on on the item yet.
Okay,
The item's already on the agenda, correct?
There's no motion as to which way on the agenda. There's just a discussion on the agenda.
It was only an informational item, we're making it a voting item.
Correct.
Okay.
Makes sense to me. Any discussion on that? Call the roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
sure, I'll vote on it.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the approval of the minutes for the regular board meeting from April 21st, 2022. I need a motion to approve.
I motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes?
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you. We're not going to move forward to presentations, and Mr. Coughlin, take it away. Sure.
Thank you, President Miranda, Superintendent Spicer, Board of Education. It is again my privilege and pleasure to share with you some of our student artists from throughout the district. This month, we round out our school showcase for the academic year with some of our Monstars from Meadowview. So if our student artists from Meadowview would please come forward. And for those of you who are unaware, Monstars is a term of endearment at Meadowview. They are the Meadowview Monstars. So we would like to recognize first in kindergarten, Timmy Hickey, and the artwork is going to start down on the right there. So Timmy has the fruit bowl. Congratulations. Apples. Sorry, they were apples. And then from first grade, we have Maya Wagstrom. Congratulations. Maya has the dancing giraffe. From second grade, we have Max Roberts. Congratulations, bud. Great work. Cedar Chapman is a third grader with this beautiful floral vase. Congratulations. Colton Dashley is in fourth grade with this window portrait here. Congratulations. Well done. Caleb Easley has the geometric print over my right shoulder. Congratulations. And Simra Saif has this delicious looking pizza stitching. Congratulations. And a special thank you to Principal Ellison and Allie Green, our art teacher at Meadowview. It's picture time. Thank you. Thank you. And as they are making their way for their pictures, I'd like to share with you a few highlights to round out the academic year from fine arts and extracurricular activities. The Milford High School esports program, which has been a state champion, has won national and international tournaments, and is quickly making a name for themselves in only their third or fourth year of existence, has been selected as one of only two schools in Ohio, two schools in its entirety, they just both happen to be from Ohio, to be featured in an upcoming documentary on the rise of esports in Ohio and in the country. So we had a film crew on campus earlier this week. So we are looking forward to that finished product, probably in August, right around the start of the school year, and we're hoping we can do a screening of it in our auditorium. So very exciting for our esports program. As I mentioned last month, a few weeks ago, we held the District Art Fair. We had over 1,500 pieces of artwork from kindergarten through 12th grade. It was phenomenal if you had a chance to be there, and we estimate about 2,000 people came out. So after a 2-year hiatus due to COVID, it was wonderful to have the art fair back. As I'm sure will be talked about possibly multiple times tonight, I believe the count is at 537 Milford High School seniors will be graduating from the Cintas Center on Saturday. We don't typically get this kind of applause for the fine arts piece. I could go on all night. Just as important to note for the general public, this year Cintas Center has required ticketing for all of their events. So tickets are required, though the event will be live streamed at cintascenter.com/livestream. And finally, we have some very exciting guests with us this evening. I'd like to invite our VEX Robotics program up with their coaches. They are going to talk about They are going to share with you details of their state tournament accomplishments, as well as their recognition and participation as being selected in world championships. So a pretty incredible experience.
President Miranda, Superintendent Spicer, members of the board, thank you for the great honor tonight to represent and share with you our students and some of their success. I'm Matt Arnett, president of Milford Engineering and Robotics Boosters. We've been a club for 7 years now, and we had 62 students this year. I should have this memorized, but our mission is to equip our children with skills, knowledge, and experience, excuse me, so that they are best prepared for success in a world of increasing change and competition. Everything we do, that's what we look to do, or look and make sure we're heading down the right path. So I'd like to get into team recognitions. 62 students is how many we had this year. And tonight we have less than half of them with us. So students, when I get to your team slide, if you would like to walk to the front, those are coming up next. Just some highlights of the teams overall. Some of it got cut off at the top. But we had 24 awards overall, 3 of them at state. Number 4 in the state of Ohio was our highest ranking team. The highest in the United States was 36th for one of our teams. And overall in the world, this is for regular season time, we had one team that ranked number 54. And this, we had 12 teams overall, and 5 of them are here tonight. 11 of our teams qualified for the state championship. 2 of them made it to the semifinals and came very, very close to make it to the final game. And some of them are here with us tonight. We also, tonight, have the honor of having 5 world competing qualifying teams with us here. Team 8823B, Bonsai, 8823C, Captain Crunch, 8823F, Pharaoh of the Rings, 8823G, Galaxy, and 98992D, an 8th grade team, D squared. Team 8823B, if you could make your way to the front to be recognized. So the whole team is Graham, Joshua, David, Maria, and Sarah, who are both here tonight. Well done, team. You can stay there. You can stay there. Just scoot down. A little more time for embarrassment. Team 8823C, please come forward. Britton, Trevor, Nathan, Colin, Troy, Cameron. Well done, team. Team 8823G, please come forward. Elizabeth, Rhea, Nolan, and Ethan. 8th grade team, oops, sorry. I added your slide. They may not have the latest. I literally did just before the meeting, so they might have downloaded the presentation. But we have Team 8823F. Sierra, Clara, Pratik, Andy, and Christopher. Well done, team. And finally, 8th grade team, 98992D, also competed at the World Championship. Come forward. Landon, Paul, Jude, Eli, Patrick. Well done, team. So this is less than half of our students. We might have maybe a third here. Some of them couldn't make it tonight, but I'm very impressed with what they've accomplished this year educationally, as well as you could see the success of competing at the World Championship in Dallas, Texas. So a quick recap of how they did at Worlds. You could see some of the success that the teams had, and how the way Worlds went for high school at least. They had 815 teams, and they are divided into divisions of 80 to 85 teams per division. So within their divisions, 8823B ranked number 4, C ranked 6th, F ranked 35th, and our 8th grade team was 41st. And for most of them, if not all of them, this is probably your first time competing at Worlds, definitely in person because of COVID changed things. And a little bit of special recognition for Team G. They were number 1 in their division. They were number 1 seed in the overall tournament after all the division winners came together. And when you ranked all the teams, all the 800 plus teams together, with their stats, they're number 2 overall in the world. So they did very well. Of course, none of this occurs without our wonderful teachers who put in tons of time, effort, blood, sweat, tears, giving up their weekends, nights. This guy standing next to me, Mr. Leeper, and Mr. Haney, who couldn't be here tonight. These guys are amazing. They just give so much beyond what really anybody should or expected to give, but you could see the great results that they pour their love into the students and in the teaching. So to give them some recognition for our Great Oaks teachers, Mr. Haney, who couldn't be here tonight, Mr. Ulrich couldn't be here, Mr. Gears, I don't think is here, Mr. Leeper is here, and Mr. Shepard. Well done, students. I'm very proud of what you've accomplished. How many seniors? Raise your hand. 4. Thank you, students. Thank you, board.
Before we move on, I just wanted to congratulate all the robotics students. It's really amazing that we have this program. It is truly the future of what's happening in the world, and we're preparing these kids to really succeed in the future, and they always do amazingly in their competitions. So I just really wanted to give them a shout out.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move on to our first public commentary. It is 3 minutes per speaker. Mr. Rabe is sorting through them, and he has a nice little countdown clock there if this is your first meeting since we implemented that. So have 3 minutes, so you can look up and know where you are. At 3 minutes, we're finished, and we're going to move on to the next speaker. So, do we have anybody for the first speaking?
Christine Korn? Crone, sorry.
Christine Crone, 976 Hollow Creek Drive here in Milford. I had come here to thank the formal committee and Mr. Spicer's decision to keep Anytime with Butterflies in the English honors curriculum. The vote was 5-1, which to me signals that that's a majority of the community. 5-1 means keep it in, but we all realize that might not be the case. I'm actually pretty shocked that only three formal complaints in a high school of nearly 2,000 has brought us here. I understand everyone wants the best for their children based on their family values. I don't appreciate an entire district being dragged for your individual family beliefs, okay? You have had a choice to pick another book, and it has been that way for a long time. Yet here we still all are. And what an insult to the educators who have spent their careers learning about curriculum and literacy and what is meaningful for the students' academic pursuits. I don't think this curriculum is, and the reading materials chosen in a vacuum. There is purpose and reason behind this. Literature has broad, universal themes and are preparing our students for further education beyond our Milford bubble. We are here talking about an honors book. There's purpose and reason for these books. And our educators are always willing to work with us parents. They are so good at working with us. I talk to my students, my children's teachers constantly. We work together. The teachers are not the enemy. And I apologize, teachers, that you are being called names. I'm so sorry. It is so uncalled for. Those words would not be thrown around as casually as they are right now. I, for one, fully support public schools, their educators, and what a public education stands for. I hope you educators know the majority of this community does support you, and we are behind you. We appreciate you. And these situations are already driving these cultural situations are already driving educators away, and they are not going to retain teachers. I want Milford to stay exceptional. We all do. We love this school. Let's keep it this way. Don't scare the teachers off. They're here to help our students. I want to reread a line from Mr. Spicer's district email from the formal committee vote that was 5-1. These materials align with the Milford vision to inspire and prepare our students to reach their fullest potential in a diverse and dynamic world. And our portrait of an eagle is the roadmap.
Amanda Fox?
Amanda Fox, 6331 Lake Ridge Court. It is sad to me that we started off the school year with a fight about 5 individuals needing to listen to experts. And now here we are with the board members questioning the experts. I'm the daughter of a retired public school teacher that dedicated 35 years of her life to the education of students. I myself went to public school. My 4 children go to public school, one of which is graduating in 2 short days. I'm gonna try to get through this, but woo. Senioritis for mom. One of which is graduating in 2 short school days. Milford Schools has taken my 5-year-old son, who was struggling on an autism diagnosis, eventually was made, and got him to graduation. Many of his teachers are in this room tonight, and I thank you. Okay. He will be starting his secondary education at NKU in the fall in computer science and cybersecurity. Thank you, Milford Schools. I want to share a story with you. A brand new teacher on her very first day of school has 25 fifth graders. She spends 9 months teaching these students math, reading, science, social studies. She also teaches these kids how to work together, be good friends, how to cope when life isn't always sunshines and rainbows. Now this teacher adores each one of her students and forms lasting bonds with them. Fast forward 35 years, and this teacher has now had thousands of students come through her class. She is set to retire, and one man comes to visit her on her last day of school. He had a rose for each one of her current students to give her. His 3 daughters had a rose, so did his wife. Those 3 daughters had the same teacher their dad did, and so did his wife. Sorry, hold on. You see, this teacher was more than a teacher. This woman helped this little boy through some really dark times in his childhood. He told his teacher, "I was here for your last day, and I wouldn't be anywhere else on your last day." You see, teachers are some of the most loving people you will ever meet. They would not set out to harm our children. It goes against everything they stand for. That teacher was my mom, and that student was Chris, her very first 5th grader. We all know what's going on in this community with the book of In the Times of Butterflies. The comments in this community that are supported and actually repeated by school board members is horrific and disgusting. These men and women are not here to harm our children. They're here to teach them, and they truly do think of them as their own. They want nothing but the best for our students. And I thank each and every single one of you, and I am going to be a voice for you, and I will always back you. And please know the community does not agree with the comments from the 2 board members that was publicly published in Cincinnati.com today.
Loda, and I apologize, Ellenstein?
Good evening. My name is Loida Echevestre, and I live at 5762 East Tall Oaks Drive. I'm here to talk for my daughter. She is a Milford High School graduate, and she's not able to talk in public, so I'm talking for her. I'm here today to show support to Milford teachers and students. I trust our teachers and believe they're choosing material that will give all of our students different perspectives. As they grow every year, I have read and support the teachings of the book In the Times of Butterflies. As a Latina and former Milford High School student, I wish my teachers would have used this book. I don't recall having ever read a book that had characters that I could relate to. If you decide to remove this book, imagine what that will say to our growing minority students population. The look of our community is changing. We are diverse now. We are not one race anymore. Let us show our neighbors that we are welcoming them too. Lastly, remember that last week, Milford made national headlines in newspapers and on online blogs. Is this the negative attention we want Milford to be known for? So in conclusion, I urge the board to trust the teachers as they are educated and professionals, and they have the best interests of our children in mind. Also remember that the majority of students have read this book. They have enjoyed reading it, and they saw nothing wrong with it.
Aiden Souter?
My name is Aiden Souter. I live at 1124 Klondike Road. I am a senior, about to graduate in 2 days. Just to keep it very brief, I'd just like to strongly, in the strongest terms I possibly can, condemn the attempts to remove this book from our curriculum. This book has been in our curriculum for years, and there were no complaints about it until very recently. And I should remind people that there have been only 3 total complaints against the book. The type of rhetoric that has swirled around this discussion is reprehensible. It's disgusting, and it has caused many, many issues for board members here, for teachers, for parents, and for everyone in our community. I don't think there is any reason that teachers should be called these types of names, regardless of what is happening in these schools. This book is not sexual content. This book is not disgusting. This book is not pure evil, and nor is it pure evil to teach it to our students. I read this book in sophomore year. I saw no problem with it. None of my friends saw any problem with it. And yet here we are, because of 3 complaints. This is not what Milford stands for at all. The community does not stand for this. The belief that our community does stand for this is absurd to me. I cannot fathom why anyone would believe this. Again, 3 complaints. This is not something that our entire community agrees on. If our entire community agreed on it, we would see hundreds of complaints, hundreds of messages over the course of years from parents who were disgusted by this content. But it's not disgusting content. So I ask, please, please do not remove this book from the curriculum. We don't need the negative attention. We've already been in the Cincinnati Enquirer. We've already been in the Daily Beast. We've already been in the Daily Mail. What is going to happen when we do, if we do, ban the book? Please don't ban the book.
Jenny Zent.
Jenny Zent, 5497 Enterprise. From the author's note at the end of the book, quote, I would go as far as to say that by reading books, entering other realities, and then taking those adventures back into our own lives, we are freedom fighters. One of the first things that happens in a dictatorship is that books are confiscated. People are not permitted to congregate and share ideas and stories. There is one official story, one reason to gather together, and that is for indoctrination. I know because I lived that reality in a dictatorship. You know it because you have lived that reality in the novel I have written or in other novels you have read about similar situations. A reading, thinking, empathetic citizenry is a lot less likely to be controlled or hoodwinked. The function of freedom is to free someone else. And I can't think of a better way to pass on that freedom than to make that someone else a reader and put a good book in his or her hands. Julia Alvarez, November 25th, 2010. I was on the committee to review the book in the time of the butterflies. The fact that I was invited to review the book is evidence that Mr. Daniels intentionally included parents who have been critical in the past. You may recall an email I sent criticizing the 8th grade books. Rather than file a citizen's request for reconsideration, I had a discussion with Mr. Daniels. I asked a lot of questions, and his answers gave me insight into why one of the books was chosen. While I may not agree this is the best choice for 8th grade, I fully acknowledge it is not appropriate for me to make decisions for other parents. Board policy already allows parents to request alternate books. Therefore, there is no need for me to be the literacy police for the district. In the time of the butterflies is high-quality literature. It is not pornographic. It is well written. Alvarez has the ability to weave facts with fiction, and a well-educated person can appreciate this text for its complex and mature language. My life is richer for having read this book, And I want my daughter to have the opportunity to read this book in school. I can empathize with any parent who wants to protect their child. And I understand it is difficult to accept that my child will be old enough to read this material in 2 years. But the fact is, this book is appropriate for 10th grade. Your vote tonight is not about this book. It is about supporting parent choice. I urge you to support parental rights and vote to keep In the Time of the Butterflies in the curriculum. Thank you.
Tanya Wenger.
Tanya Wenger, 6081 Donna J. Drive, Loveland. On a lighter note, I want to tell you how appreciative I am that you acknowledge the robotics kids today. Like Amanda, I also have a senior, and it's been a rough week. But I have to give a lot of thanks to the teachers that run our program, because Sierra wasn't interested, and they asked her because they were looking for more girls. And in the long run, my daughter has been in the robotics for 5 years. I also have a freshman this year and probably an 8th grader for next year. It is a huge part of what our family does. It has kept my kids interested in school, and I just want the board to know that, like, we are so grateful for it. So thank you for acknowledging them.
Patricia Colapiero.
It's Colapietro. I'm Dr. Colapietro, 1247 Rose Tree Drive. Thank you so much for tonight. I really wanted this to be positive, guys. I wanted mostly to say thank you to the teachers. I don't know who Pam Williams is, if she's here, or if you guys know her, if you will see her. I really want to say thank you to Pam Williams, and I have something written. I emailed all of you last month. My daughter, Louisa Colapietro, who graduated Milford in 2018, emailed you too. I hope you read her emails. I hope you read my emails. Last month was about how I think book banning is a terrible idea and censorship is a terrible idea. I am a Latin American immigrant from Brazil. We came here in 2009. I have 4 Milford students. We live in a very diverse street where there are 4 immigrant families with 14 kids. And like someone else said, Milford may be changing, but the high school is still 10% minorities and only 3% Latin American. So here, there you go. I just, brought the shirt because, what I want to tell you though, and again, if you want to read my emails, read my daughter's emails, I know that someone from her class is here. This is what I want you to know. When we first heard about this book, I read it a long time ago. So I went to a bookstore, and of course, 22-year-old mom's going to a bookstore. She met me, and I told her, I was like, what? Milford is banning a book? What are you talking about? When I told her, her response was visceral. Tears came to her eyes. She started crying at a bookstore, and she said, Mom, I cannot believe that. That book changed me. And then she went on to sit down with my colleague who was at the bookstore and tell me how much Pam Williams was not an easy teacher. Her class apparently gave Pam Williams a very hard time, to the point that she gave them an extra assignment, and the assignment was a cross to bear. I hope and pray that all of you read the book. It is a wonderful book. And aside from the excerpts that were taken from the book, absolutely out of context, there was a lot of religion context into that. 6 years later, to get a 22-year-old to still mention how she used that essay to many, many, many times that she had to do different essays or have to write about herself, including her current email to you guys, because that's how that school and that teacher and that book impacted her, tells you what I think you need to hear about how the school took this. So in my email, you'll see what I think that the message will be given to the kids and the teachers when you try to silence and censor. Your message will be, minorities are less than, you don't have a room here, you're not safe here, and I am concerned, especially when I hear about well, let's make a citizens council to see what the curriculum is going to look like. Citizens are not experts. None of you are experts. This Milford is changing. What Milford looks like needs to reflect what the kids are asking for. The teachers are experts. Keep them safe in school. Make those discussions safe for all. Do not exclude minorities. We are here. They're only 10%. Don't make them less than. Thank you so much.
Annette Zimmerman.
Annette Zimmerman, 1193 State Route 131. So, guess I'm going to be the odd man out here. I want to say that I'm the person who filed the formal complaint. I may as well say that. It's been listed in the Inquirer today. And one of the reasons I did that it's not because I don't support free choice for adults, but I think for minors, it's our role as adults to be observant about what they're reading. Just because kids may hear things or see things in school doesn't mean, that we can stop that. It's going to happen. But what they're being taught in a classroom or what they're seeing at home can be controlled. Banning is it is variable. Do I want the book banned? I want the book banned for this age group. I'm not saying ban the book for adults that are in a position to read them. I'm going to read a passage of this book, and I want all of you to think about it. And I don't understand how this, you can't say that this is acceptable for a child to read. Well, I'm not going to say young adult because my daughter's 15, but there was a struggle. But no one could tell. It came in the dark in the evil hours when the hands wake with a life of their own. They rambled over my growing body. They touched the plumping of my chest, the mound of my belly, and on down. I'm going to skip a little bit further. When those young men whose surnames had been appropriated for years by my mooning girlfriends came to the store and drummed their big hands on the counter, I wanted to take each finger in my mouth and feel their calluses with my tongue. My shoulders, my elbows, my knees ached to be touched. That's just one of the excerpts that, I found issue with as a parent. I monitor what my child has access to at home. We look at ratings for TVs, for movies, so on and so forth. My daughter has spent almost 4 months in the library this year because I chose an alternate book, and that was what she had to do. She had to go to the library because books are discussed in class. And each time a different book came up, I was following along. This one came up, and I spent over 2 days reading it and making notes for myself so that I had something to go by because I wanted to read the book. And I'll tell you, I'm not hateful. I don't get on Facebook and post it. I went right to the school board. In fact, I'll tell you, one of the people that have been the most helpful this year to me is Dr. Arnold back there. And I'd like to commend you for that because no one else has done anything, and I refuse to let her set in the library again.
That's all I have.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. We're going to move ahead to item D, Board of Education business. And the first topic and the only topic on this agenda is
Dave, can you turn your mic on or
the book
closer? Yeah. Be closer to it. It's hard to hear.
Okay,
Thank
I
you.
will try to get on top of it. So we are ready for to discuss this book review. I have a motion that I think I need to read here just to make sure that everybody's on the same page because it is different than the agenda in front of us. and this was made by Emily. It's a motion to uphold the recommendation of the committee that reviewed the novel In the Time of the Butterflies based on policy KLB and was accepted by the superintendent that the novel continue to be part of the 10th grade ELA curriculum. Before we start discussion, I guess as a little bit of a recap, I think most people know that are in this room perhaps, and but maybe not so much for the people that are watching online or on TV. Criticism of book or other materials used in the Milford Exempted Village School District may be expected from time to time. It's going to happen. Board does not permit any individual or group to exercise censorship over an instructional material in library collections, but it recognizes that at times reevaluations of certain material is going to be desirable, and that's what we went through. The district administrators received 3 citizens' requests for reconsideration of this novel that's used in the 10th grade curriculum. In accordance with the Board of Education Policy KLB, which is available online if you'd like to look it up, the superintendent convened a review board. In the Time of the Butterflies was part of the board curriculum adopted in 2014 and 2015, that school year. And since that time, Milford teachers have been working from the documents that they were given at that point and are utilizing the district adopted material. The citizens' requests were in regard to In the Time of the Butterflies. The committee was convened the first 2 weeks of this month of May, and after the committee's review, the superintendent reviewed the original request and the committee's reevaluation and rendered a decision in this matter, determining to keep the book as part of the English curriculum. This situation was deemed unsatisfactory by one of the complainants and has been appealed to the board, and that's how we got to where we are tonight. Parents and guardians always have the right to choose alternate texts as outlined in the policy. It's right there in black and white. If a parent requests that his or her child not read a given book, the teacher and or the school administrator will resolve that issue by arranging for an alternate material meeting, essentially all the same instructional purposes of the original book. District recognizes the need and the right of the students to have free access to many different types of books and materials. It also recognizes the right of the professional staff to select books and other materials supportive of the district educational philosophy and goals. It's an ongoing process to balance all these considerations. And now I'm going to open discussion.
I would like to start. I would like to know from each board member if you've read the book in its entirety. So I have read it in its entirety. Mrs. Nolan, have you read it in its entirety? Mrs. Mason, have you read it in its entirety?
Yes, I have read it in its entirety.
Mr. Miranda, have you read it in its entirety?
Not only did I read it, but I also checked out the movie and read the movie as well. Or watched the movie
On a
as well.
VHS tape? Sorry.
Let me speak for him, yes.
Mr. Combs, have you read the
I
book
have,
in its entirety?
I have. Actually, this week.
I would like to jump in. I think that a lot of this has been said by our public, but I just wanted to reiterate, this book was chosen by a committee of professionals. Our teachers have dedicated their careers to teaching the language arts. They know much more about the language arts than probably anyone else in this room. They also work every day with our community's children, and they understand the nuances of discussing sensitive subject matter in an age-appropriate way. They are experts in their field. They do not take their job lightly, and I have only seen professionalism from all of our students, or from all of our teachers. It is completely unacceptable to accuse them of being predators, perverts, or pedophiles, all things that I have seen online, and suggest that they lose their jobs because of quotes taken out of context of a book that has been on the curriculum since 2014. They are doing their jobs to prepare our students for the future. This book is not an obscure novel, and it is not about sex. It has sex in it. It is not about sex. It has won many awards, including the National Medal of Arts. The American Library Association calls it a notable book. It aligns with our portrait of an eagle, as Mr. Spicer said in his comment online. It provides a diverse set of voices that we don't usually hear from, which is very important in our community. It also sheds light on an important event in history that many people do not know of. It teaches our students to be critical thinkers and consider context and the whole novel and not just a part of it. It has been used several times in the free essay portion of the AP Lit exam. I think this is an extremely important point. By reading this book, our students who go on to AP Lit who have knowledge of this book, they have a leg up on the AP exam. Our teachers are doing exactly what they are supposed to be doing by preparing our students for this AP Lit exam. We have heard from many people through email to the board, and several of those people were students and teachers who have said that this is a student favorite. It is a much-loved book, and it has changed people's lives for the better. It is also part of a section called Around the World, which talks about diversity and has a diverse amount of authors from different parts of the world. This is sometimes the only time that these students get to hear from these voices. This is extremely important in creating empathetic lifelong learners, which is our goal. I would like to also say that I believe very strongly in our policies. There has always been a policy in place for a parent to choose an alternate text that aligns with their values. This is very important. A parent has a right to do this. However, according to our policy, while the board recognizes the right of parents to influence the education of their children, it does not allow the wishes of an individual parent to infringe upon the rights of other students in the class. Mr. Daniels, Mr. Daniels led a professional and fair citizens committee. He kept the board apprised of what was going on the entire time and how he considered the committee and how it would be fair. The Citizens Committee was required to read the entire book, marking passages that they wanted to speak about. They were required to come with an open mind to discuss this book critically. I thank everyone who served on that Citizens Committee. It is a vital part of this, and it takes a lot of time. I thank everyone who served, came with an open mind, and discussed this book. I believe the citizens' complaints were handled with dignity and integrity in this committee, as it should be, and I will be voting to uphold their decision.
I've got some thoughts as well. First, I honestly think it's embarrassing that so many felt that this was a headline news story. Milford parents concerned about reading material, which is literally a common theme that's going on nationwide, should not cause the community and news outlets to react like the sky is falling. Parents being concerned about what their kids are reading or exposed to is simply called parenting. Some may agree with it, some may not. Everyone has a different point of view, and that's okay. I guarantee most parents don't know what their kids are reading in school, and I also guarantee with 100% certainty that there are many, many people in this community that are concerned with the reading materials, not just this book and not just this grade. I've talked to many parents, and I've been emailed and messaged by numerous parents that have, one, either had concern about various book content at different levels in different books, or have they have discussed with their teachers or Mr. Daniels over the last couple years, not just recently, regarding reading materials. The difference is the policy KLB forms were first to be submitted now. 3 of them have been submitted, so those are the first considered official complaints. The district can honestly say those were the first complaint, yet everybody here knows those were not the first complaints or concerns or discussions regarding reading content. So why haven't parents submitted the official form before? Maybe they didn't know it existed. It's buried in hundreds and hundreds of pages of policies. Or maybe they didn't want to be subjected to community fallout, or more importantly, didn't want their kids to be retaliated against in the community, in the classroom, or on sports teams. All things that I've heard from community members that have mentioned have happened. A community member emailed me to remind me of a Facebook post I made back in August regarding my concern about reading materials. At that point, I was running for this position, and I had talked to many families that had concerns about book content, with classroom books and the summer reading list at that time. This community member accentuated the very point that this is not a new issue. I stated then, back in August, that if I was elected, I would advocate for a parent or community committee to review book materials. I started advocating for that when I was sworn in January. And what many here in the community may or may not realize is that it's an often talked about concern of mine at board meetings, curriculum meetings, and in discussions. The truth is no one person or parent has time to read every book or learning instrument that their child has, and it's even harder if you have several kids. It's hard to decide or choose what you may or may not be okay with unless you can first read the books yourself, and no one has time to read every book. That's why my thoughts on having a committee that could divide up the books and reading materials that could see what's in them, not to make decisions if they should be kept or removed, not to pass judgment on them, but literally just to objectively indicate what each book or material might contain, not whether you agree with it or not. I think we can all agree that what one person finds offensive, another person will not. What's a hot topic for some isn't for someone else. We will never please everyone. However, there's a few categories that most people would agree are the lightning rods, as Paul Daniels calls them. I would say those categories are sexual content, language, and religion. I've received so many emails from community members, as all of us have, reminding us that Milford means all, and reminding us about diversity and inclusion. And yes, all means even those that are conservative. Those with values and diversity that may have values different than your own. What I found ironic is that with hundreds of comments circulating on local Facebook pages, many comments stated things like, these complaining parents can't force their beliefs on the rest of us. Yes, that's exactly the thing that you're okay doing, conversely. I think it may be lost on everyone that's commenting like that the very people they are suggesting inclusion are excluding some. Milford currently lists on their curriculum on their website, which I think is great. I would really like to see, along with the book lists, a brief description and a potential objectionable content. I'm completely in favor of transparency on all fronts, and then a parent and a student can look at the list, possible objectionable content, and make a more informed decision. They can look deeper into the books if they would like. I also know that other schools and districts utilize a form that parents could sign off on books with possible objectionable material, so that's something else to consider. But to sit here and say that these books, if you don't like it, you can leave the classroom, or you can leave the school and go to a private school, or just don't say anything out of fear of the retribution that we've witnessed take place in this community the past few weeks, I think is the ultimate hypocrisy of Milford meaning all, or any claim of diversity. The other thing I want to kind of go through is, while I was taking notes as some of the people commented tonight, is somebody mentioned they could relate to characters. I completely agree with that. I was taking notes on my phone as I was reading, and let me find it. I'll probably say her name wrong. Petria, this was one of the scenes. So Petria is pregnant. She had just lost her baby. She was 17, and this passage talks about how she lost her baby and then she lost her faith. I was that person. I can completely relate to her. I lost a child. I lost my faith. But what she's saying in this book was that she was satisfying her husband's grief through sex. And what I disagree, which I don't think is appropriate for 15 to 16-year-olds, is talking about riding him hard and fast. Like, that could have been completely left out of the book and still had the same message of grieving and faith. So I think while the sexual content in this is not overwhelming, it comes down to me, what's appropriate for a 15 or 16-year-old? I read this book through the lens of myself, which is a 50-year-old woman, through experience, maturity, and life experience that comes along with it. I don't know that it's possible that I or any other adult can go back and read it through the lens of a 15 or 16-year-old. I can sit here and talk to all of you about menstruation, sex, whatever, and not be embarrassed about it. But I don't know the same is true for a 15-year-old or 16-year-old girl or a 16-year-old boy talking about ejaculation and erections. Are they comfortable with that? I don't know. What I have more issue with than the actual content of this book is putting the kids in a position of reading that aloud in the classroom with their peers. I don't think that that's appropriate. I read comments from the community such as kids are doing worse than this. Maybe some are. I'd argue that most 15 and 16-year-olds aren't. Other comments that they see worse on movies or video games. My question to that is, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Did the normalization in society come first and then classrooms followed? Or did classroom normalization come first and then it spread into society? I don't have the answer to that, but it is a question I have. These kids have access to so much at their fingertips. It doesn't mean it's okay. And the maturity level of most does not match the level of maturity of content that they can access. I feel that school doesn't need to add to it. There's a huge mental health crisis amongst youth. Maybe we need to step back and look at all the factors contributing to it and wonder if these kids are being subjected to a world of mature content that they aren't quite ready for. That's my synopsis.
Do you have anything?
No.
So I just want to applaud everyone's passion tonight and leading up to this. Although I disagree with most of the positions, I'm very proud to live in a country where we can express ourselves. Whether I agree with you or not, I'm just happy to be born into this country and be able to express ourselves. So thank you for that. This democratic republic that we live in, and the theme associated with the book that I did read in its entirety is an interesting one that I think all of us can get behind. It's a story of four sisters, really, that it has experienced in their country experienced the grasp of a tyrant. And again, everyone in this room can relate to that in some way or another. We've all been oppressed in some ways. We've all been denied certain freedoms in certain parts of our lives, whether we're 5 years old or 80 years old, we can relate. And the book is not about sex. The book has a varying degree of sexual situations that it describes. I actually enjoyed the book except for those scenes. I was disappointed that Ms. Alvarez included those because I candidly thought they added nothing to the book. In critique, when I look at the character development, I thought it was pretty weak. I thought it was pretty disjointed, how they moved from story to story, changing persons. It doesn't mean that the overarching theme of the book was lost on me. I actually think as a mature adult, it resonated well with me. I've been a fighter all my life, and this story really spoke to me in a lot of ways. I did appreciate the diversity of thought and the fact that it was a historical fiction that a lot of folks can look into and read about. Trujillo and the character was a brutal tyrant. I'm talking about tortures, jailings, and killings. I won't spoil it for those that may want to read the book, but I will say my objection to this book is very similar to what you just heard from my colleague. I think that the maturity level of the students, I actually think the content is too mature for this group. I don't object to this book being read by mature adults. Our country has defined maturity in two different age groups. My wife would argue I'm still not there, but it's 18 and 21, not 14, 15, or 16. So my objection to this being taken out of the rotation, which I will tell you, I do object to it being in the rotation, and I'll be voting shortly on that, is simply that the book is not built because of these 5 or 6 unnecessary scenes. It's not built for immature minds. That's why I'm voting the way I do. Again, this public in front of me and those that weren't able to attend, I applaud the passion. Thank you very much for sharing all of your feedback. We all parent in certain ways. Melissa had mentioned something recent, just a few minutes ago, about the hypocrisy that is associated with asking others to respect your particular wishes. I'm sharing with you today. I may not respect all of it, but I respect the fact that you live in this country and are able to voice it. And I just ask the same for those that feel differently than you do. That's what I'm asking for. We can agree to disagree. Civility has gone out the window in this country, and it's a shame. Because I know of several of you in this audience right now, and today, you won't even speak to me. And we used to speak at games regularly, and you don't anymore because you know where I stand. And I would love to be able to have open, honest dialogue with you about our differences. But in today's society, unfortunately, we've been taught that you hate people that think differently. And I think that's a shame. I want to mention something really quickly about complaints. Our administration has mentioned twice now in our last board meeting about a bullying complaint that a citizen had brought up, that we've only received 5 or 6 formal bullying complaints in the last several years. That is probably incredibly true. I hope that this community and those that are watching, if your child is bullied in any way, shape, or form, you better file a formal complaint and stop this nonsense of counting only formal complaints. I'll pivot from that with the bullying topic to the book topic. If you object to a book, file a formal complaint. Do not send an email. Do not call the teacher. File a formal complaint. We are not going to hide behind formal complaints being counted any longer in this community. There's some challenges. This school district is a great school district. We have pockets where it's not so great, and we need to voice those instances. I'm very proud of very, very many parts of this school district. And you know what? There's some parts that I'm not so proud about. And I'm going to continue to fight to make it as good as we possibly can be. Our teachers have a hard job. They are dealt a parenting hand that is very difficult. The quality of parenting in this country, this is an opinion, has degraded significantly over the years. And guess who has to pay the price for that? Guess who has to pay the price for that? Our teachers. Ask any of them if they've had to pay the price for that. They have. Teachers have a hard job. They do. Formal complaints, please file them. You've heard my take on the book. And that's all I have.
So, I'd like to remind folks that we're here today, we're talking about actually about a process. This KLB policy that we all know by heart by now. But we're talking about whether that process was followed and whether we want to uphold the process. And within that process, there was trusted experts and community and teachers. And it's all, I mean, we could book review and have English class here all day long, but we're talking about, was the process followed and how are those steps being followed from here? If you want me to read objectionable things, I actually brought a book here. I can read some stuff out of too, but that's not the point.
Please do.
That's not the point. The point is we have a process, we have experts in the community. Thank you very much to Mr. Daniels. I was very impressed by the people that he brought together, even those who chose not to participate in the discussion itself. And I also want to say a big thank you to Mrs. Zent for telling us how that process has worked over the years. She's been taking advantage of the opportunity to talk to Mr. Daniels and find what's right for her family and to work within that bounds. And while I don't want everyone in the community to do that because we only have one Paul Daniels and he only has so many hours in a day, that is their right and that is the process. So we are talking about, we have a process, we have trusted experts, and do we agree with the outcome that they had?
Okay, and I guess my last word is our largest minority in this district is Hispanic. This book absolutely speaks to the Hispanic population. It also speaks to the female population, which is probably the largest single population in the school as well. I guess where I'm coming from is if there is any failing at all here, it's that we need to be, when we follow policy KLB, we need to make sure that we're being as inclusive and as even as we possibly can. And I don't have an answer. The one thing that I said was, what if you have two books? What if people pick what book they get to read and discuss, and you break it down that way? It's probably a bad idea. Mr. Spicer's probably not happy with me saying that, but let's have a good idea on how we do this, how we don't ostracize kids, how we have everybody. Milford means all. How we do that. I think we can go forward and over the summer maybe come up with a better way of doing that, or at least certainly get the discussion started. I spoke at the beginning. I kind of wrapped it up here. I have nothing further. Does anybody else have any other discussion?
I do.
Yes.
I'm not entirely opposed to the book being in Milford curriculum. I'm more opposed to it being the main book of the class and it being read aloud. I think that lends itself to some real awkwardness. And while a lot of kids say they don't have a problem with a book, the reality is kids are still under the jurisdiction of their parents till they're 18. So a lot of kids are, it's more what the parents think. So I'm not opposed to it being a choice. Maybe instead of that being the main book, and then if you don't like it, you choose an alternate. Maybe it being the alternate, and then if you want to choose to read it, then that's perfectly fine. What I am opposed to, and I think we really need to find the answer to, is kids being sent out of the classroom if they object to the main reading material, because that completely ostracizes and segregates in a community that's supposed to be very much inclusive. So I don't know how we can go about finding the answer to that, the solution, the remedy.
I just want to clarify, the entire book is not read aloud. There's not enough hours in the day to do that. The objectionable parts are not read in the classroom.
I believe Mr. Daniels actually spoke to the board about this, and he let us know that the only part that had been read aloud in the class was the part, Maria Teresa, she's the youngest daughter, she had some diary entries, and in those diary entries, she talks about things like going shopping, buying shoes, things like that. These were not objectionable parts. If a child is asked to read and refuses, there's no retribution against that child. They just move on to the next part. None of the objectionable parts of the novel are read out loud.
The teacher that is leading that class was asked a couple of different questions, and we found out that some of the answers were untrue. That is a fact. Some of those answers were untrue. The specific answers were comments put on a written comments put on a page, a graded page, that was deemed that I did not do that, and in fact, it happened.
So are you talking about the content of the book and the process we're going through? Are you talking about a specific student and a teacher, which I don't think is appropriate
The
at
whole
the
reason,
moment?
the whole reason we're here, hold on, the whole reason we're here is because of a complaint from a couple, actually from 3 community members that we've talked openly about. The issue at hand is not only the content, but also we've talked openly about how it was handled afterwards.
We are voting on,
I know what we're voting on. I'm giving a
and
little
we
bit.
cannot discuss personnel in a public meeting.
We're talking directly. We are talking directly about how this was handled after the fact.
No,
Those
Jerry,
are the-
Jerry,
those are-
I come to all of my
Jerry, I think you are
meetings.
inappropriate and off topic. That is a separate topic. We have a motion here to uphold what the committee said.
And
You are going down a specific student-teacher relationship.
We discussed how this was handled, and I commented on how it was handled.
Okay, then you're done commenting.
I'm not done commenting.
Okay, continue.
Okay, great.
I would also like to point out one more thing. It is my understanding with our policy that if a parent requests the child to read a different book, that child is allowed to stay in the classroom. It is only a last resort that they are sent to the library, and that is after much discussion with people who are deciding what is to be done. This is a team effort. There are many people making this decision together, including the parent. And as I understand it, everybody who objects to this book or another book and chooses another book is treated with respect and part of this team to decide how their child best gets the curriculum. They're not sent to the library to read by themselves unless that is decided by that parent.
And just to be clear, back to discussing individuals that are in our employ, the purpose of executive session is to do that. It's not to be done here in front of a crowd. Any other discussion? Mr. Rabe?
You need a motion and a second.
We are voting on a recommendation to uphold the superintendent's decision and retain in the time of the butterflies as part of our curriculum.
So I motion. So we need a motion and a second.
I'll second.
Okay, any other discussion? I don't believe we do. A yes vote keeps it, a no vote removes it.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
A no vote means there's no motion. So a yes vote is to uphold the recommendation, and a no vote means we don't know what's happening.
Then you'd have another vote after that.
Yep. Well, hold on for a second.
Okay?
At this point, We are voting to keep the book in the rotation or not?
We're voting to keep,
The
we're voting
motion
to
that I-
keep the
the motion
book
that I
in the
handed you.
rotation, period.
Right.
If that motion fails in a vote, then another motion could be made to remove it. But if we vote to keep it, then we are complete here. Is that correct, Mr. Rabe?
Yeah, so right now you have a motion on the floor, and I'll read Mrs. Chestnut's motion. What you're voting on is to uphold the recommendation of the committee that reviewed the novel In the Time of the Butterflies based on policy KLB and was accepted by the superintendent that the novel continue to be part of the 10th grade ELA curriculum. So that's.
So to paraphrase and be clear, we're getting ready to vote either yes to keep the book in the rotation or no.
No. Or you have to make, or there is no motion. We're voting on the motion to keep it in the rotation.
This is
Correct
what I
me,
wrote.
Mr. Parliamentarian, if
Yeah.
I say anything wrong. All we are
Correct.
doing is voting to keep it in the rotation.
Correct.
So once we have that vote, it either passes or it fails. If it passes, it's done. If it fails, there could be another motion to remove it.
Yeah.
Or
You
to
could vote
take
to
any
remove
other
it
action.
Or to
any
take
Isn't
any
it
other
one-
action, or there could be no motion. Mr.
Okay,
Rabe?
so if I want to vote yes, I want to keep the book, but not as the main book, but as an alternative within the collection, how do I vote on this one? Like, I'm not
It's
understanding
this
the two parts
exact
to
statement
this.
is what we are voting.
Right.
Okay.
This exact statement.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you, Mr. Spicer, do you want a copy of this?
Yeah, this motion just keeps it in the ELA curriculum for 10th grade.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Rabe, call the roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
I will vote yes, but I would like to see it in, with the details worked out of reading aloud and it possibly being one of two choices in the book.
And
One of two
it's
choices in the.
it's either a yes or it's a no, but we certainly would take that back to committee, just so everybody here is clear what we'll be talking about this further after the fact, if this motion passes.
Okay, I will vote yes to keep it with the caveats that we discussed.
There are no caveats. It's a yes or a no.
Yes or no? We do understand your position, though.
Okay.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
No.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes. Okay, folks, thank you. Now we move on to the next part of our meeting, which is the treasurer's report, and this will take a little bit of time. Mr. Rabe, so he's been
Dave,
resting
you're
up
really-
over there.
Can you like get real close? It's real quiet.
I can only get inside
Yes,
of it.
that close, that close. Thank you.
Can you turn me up? Mr. Rabe,
Do you want to switch?
time for the treasurer's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. First item is a recommendation to approval of the board reports for the month ending April 30th, 2022.
We need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Just a couple items to point out. We are little over 83% of the year completed. General funds, almost 78%. Couple items to point out also on the restricted and unrestricted aid. We had the issue where we were still waiting on some of the state formula. We did have that figured out, so we had to make some corrections as far as coding is concerned, which actually flipped some money that was in the unrestricted down to the restricted aid. In the month, we also did receive the rollback in homestead from the state. Last year, we didn't receive that until May, so there's a little bit of a timing issue, and that's a little over $2 million on that. We did receive almost $22,000 in interest on the month, $233,000 on the year, and on the bond retirement money, little over $1,700 on the month, and $10,805 for the year.
Any other discussion? Call the roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes. Thank you.
Next item is the approval of the annual appropriations resolution.
We need a motion to approve the annual appropriations resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Just a couple items to point out that what we are adjusting. The bond retirement fund, this is to cover the fees that I missed including in last month's. We are increasing the food service with the increased cost of food as well as taking on Norwood. They've collected additional money. Now we just need to appropriate increase the appropriations to cover those costs. The endowment fund, which is a scholarship for a senior, student activities and athletics for senior prom, as well as transportation for athletics. The auxiliary service we're adjusting to match what they did receive from the state on the year. And then early childhood special education, this was just a change in federal funding. So we are adjusting those.
I forgot to comment on the board reports something, but I wanted to bring up the audit that we received. Did
I was
miss
going to
that?
talk about it later,
Oh,
but
okay,
go right
okay.
ahead.
No, you can talk. I just want to make sure that we talk about the audit.
Yes.
Okay, continue, sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, correct?
Correct.
Call the roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you.
The next item is the disposal of fixed asset. These are a number of band instruments from the high school.
Okay, we need a motion to approve disposal of fixed assets as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Anybody wants a tuba or a clarinet or a sousaphone?
I think the sousaphones may be counted for.
Sousaphones are gone, okay. A
Are
clarinet or a
Are we
tuba?
donating those or throwing them away, or what are we doing?
I believe it's the sousaphones. West Claremont wants to purchase those. Obviously, the other items, we'll, I think we've reached out to Buddy Rogers. They have no interest in them. Josh might be able to give you a little bit more than.
Things are probably 20 years old.
Yes, the instruments listed are very old. All of them have not been used in several years. They're really cost prohibitive for us to restore at this point. For just a small amount more, we could buy a brand new instrument. So we will make attempts to sell them. If we cannot sell them, we'll donate them.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. The next item, every year, we do have to present to you the 5-year forecast. We typically do this once in November, and then we have to do this once again in the spring. So before I ask for a formal approval, we'll walk through the presentation of the 5-year forecast. Go ahead. Just go ahead. There we go. So as I mentioned, the 5-year forecast is something we're required to do by state law once in November, and then once again in the early spring in either April or May. The 5-year forecast is a recommendation as a best past practice from GFOA. So looking at the forecast only includes the general fund. It gives 3 years of historical data, 5 years of forecasted data, along with several assumptions that go along with the forecast. So looking at the forecast, as of right now, we are estimated for the current fiscal year, go back one. For the current fiscal year, we're estimated receipts of about $76.5 million. As you can see from the pie graph, 58% of that comes from local property taxes and rollback. The rollback in the homestead is what we receive from the state. 32% comes from the state foundation formula, as well as 10% comes from other local income sources. So looking at the local property tax, bar graph kind of shows you the history and the projections. A couple items to point out. In 2020, Claremont went through a reappraisal year. In that year, when we look at our fiscal year, because our fiscal year crosses tax years, the first payment we received this fiscal year is actually based upon 2020 property values. The second payment, which we received here in February, is based upon 2021 property values. Overall, real estate taxes increased $632,000. $93,000 came from residential and agriculture, 56 came from commercial and industrial, and 482, almost 483 came from utilities. So that's your Duke gas lines, your pipelines, your telephone poles from Cincinnati Bell, and so forth. The state foundation, this is the big switch, not only this fiscal year, but from the forecast that was put together back in November. One of the things that the state did with their latest biennial budget, which they approved in June, is they adopted a new state funding formula. The projections that we were getting off of that state foundation formula, we were estimated to receive about $300,000 in additional revenue once the formula was fully phased in. When we talk about that, the proposal was to phase in this over a 6-year period. So that $300,000, it wasn't going to show up in year 1. It probably won't show up until year 4 or 5 for us. The other piece of that with the proposal, the 6-year phase-in, with the biennial budget at the state level only being approved at a 2-year cycle, there's no guarantee that the state will continue that phase-in after next year. So when we looked at the forecast, we kind of anticipated what we were going to get this year and next year and kind of flatlined it because there is no guarantee we're going to get that. The other thing with the state foundation, because it came so late in the year, the Ohio Department of Ed wasn't ready programming-wise to run full calculations of how it was going to play out. And we kind of talked about this. The original proposal was we wouldn't see it in October, and then we weren't going to see it until December, and then in January, that report was finally released so we could actually see the numbers and how it was calculated. And if you remember back in January, we saw a significant catch-up in funding from the state to catch us up back in those 6 months. So when we did the forecast back in November, we weren't really sure what everything was going to look like. So that's one of the big things you'll notice between November's forecast compared to this one. One of the things that is in the forecast, there is a guarantee that we could not receive any money less than what we received last year through a calculation. As of right now, through the formula, we are on $239,000 on that guarantee. So if they didn't have the guarantee, we'd actually be short that amount. So that's when we took a look at the phase-in. If you take a look at the total $300,000 increase over the 6 years, the $239 in the phase-in, if they fully phase it in over the 6 years, I wouldn't expect us to see any type of state funding increase at least until year 4 or 5. One of the things the state did in the forecast is they made several additional items, what they refer to as restricted aid, is in funding that we can only spend on certain items. Last year, that dollar amount was about $54,000. This year, that's $1.7 million of money that's restricted on how we can spend it. Some of the items, the largest item in that category is about $830,000. It has to be spent on student wellness. Some of the other items included gifted services, English learner services, and those items. So when you look at the forecast, there's a big switch even from last year to this year when you look at the restricted funds. One of the other...
Quick question about restricted funds. Those are all funds that we will be able to spend because they're items in our budget, unlike the cable, like I know one of the ESSER things was cable, and they said you get this much, but we just couldn't spend it because we didn't have
Correct.
it.
No,
Okay.
the money that we get, we fully expect and have it allocated that we'll be able to
Okay,
spend it.
cool.
Yes.
Thank you, sorry.
Sure. One of the other items they did with the forecast is regarding tuition payments. When we look at open enrollment, both students that are coming into the district as well as students going out of the district. In years past, the foundation formula, the money that we receive through open enrollment As you can see, it was a little over $1 million. That was reflected in other local income on the 5-year forecast. Now that money is included in the state foundation line as unrestricted aid. The other three pieces, when you look at it, the open enrollment of students going out, the community school payments, and the Peterson Scholarship. As far as the community school and the Peterson Scholarship, the state decided to take that burden off of school districts, and they're funding that completely from a state, a different funding formula. But when you look at our 5-year forecast, last year we had those figures in the purchase services side as an expense on the forecast. This year, those items are no longer included because they're handled differently.
And does that save us, because didn't we have to pick up some of the money when it went through us?
We did. So
So
when
this
you look
saved
at,
us a little
yeah,
bit?
when you looked at the forecast, we were averaging about $3,400, a little over $3,400 per student. But when they look at, say, for example, a community school kid, they were pulling out a little bit more than $6,000.
Oh, wow.
So it does, yeah, so.
That's a pretty significant
It is.
saving for us.
Correct,
And
correct.
Isn't it
And-
true, Brian, just to share with the group, that now the state funding formula has made it easier for us to account for only those enrolled in our district, correct?
Correct. One of the big changes that they did make is in years past, what was it on the foundation formula and how you were funded was based upon the students that resided in your district. So when you look at the open enrollment going out, the community school kids who were going out, we were getting some funding for them, but then that's why they were taking it away. The way the formula is written now is we get funded based upon the kids that are actually showing up and we're educating. So that's a big change of how everything is being calculated.
Yeah,
So when you look at it, even when you try to compare some of the numbers from last year to this year, you're truly not comparing apples to apples because of these changes that the state made.
I think I just wanted to point that out. The accounting was retro. We had to reimburse back to on the balance sheet, and here we're only actually counting attendees.
Correct.
Which is so much more simple, and it's going to be very challenging for us to compare both. And I just wanted to point it out because it's an important change.
Absolutely. Okay. Next slide. The next item is the all other revenues. When we look at it, I just wanted to give you some of the changes compared to this year to last year when you look at it. Obviously, we're seeing an increase in all-day kindergarten tuition this year. Obviously, last year with the COVID and the Eagle Online, some parents decided to hold their kids back and start kindergarten a little late. So obviously, this year, we're starting to see that uptick in all-day kindergarten tuition. Obviously, I talked about the open enrollment. Interest rates are obviously driving the interest that we're earning on any type of investments. It's very hard to get any type of decent interest rate right now, as everyone's well aware. And then also, in the all other revenue, we did have the charity Lucas Field, the 470 that was donated by the athletic boosters. We also received $20,000 from FC Cincinnati. We also do have the Cincinnati Bengals grant. It's not included in here. Reason being is that grant is a reimbursement grant, so we have to spend the money and then ask them to reimburse us, which we probably won't start seeing that money until next fiscal year in July. So it is included in the forecast, it's just not included until next year's numbers. So next item we take a look at is we're looking at the expenditures. We talked about the revenues. Expenditures, we are projected currently to spend $76.6 million. The big blue piece that you can see there, the vast majority of what we spend our funds on are salaries and benefits for staff. The next biggest piece is going to be purchase services. When you look at the purchase services, the vast majority of that is going to be the transportation with Peterman. And then obviously the other smaller categories, 1% of total spend and 3% of total spend. This is just a bar graph to kind of give you an idea, put it in a different perspective of how where things are projected to go in relation. Oh, skip it. There we go. So when we take a look at purchase services, let's go back and take a look at salaries and benefits real quick. Right now, we do have the contract with the teachers and the classified. You can leave it on this slide. Classified and with the teachers and the classified staff. We do have agreements for the next 2 years, so those salary increases are built in there, as well as any type of increases that we'll see in benefits, health insurance, dental insurance, and so on and so forth. When we take a look at purchase services, comparing last year to this year, as I mentioned, one of the things is the open enrollment. The community schools in the Peterson aren't included in this year's numbers compared to last year's. Also, I wanted to point out a couple capital projects. One of the things that we do over the summer, because our fiscal year ends in July, some things split fiscal years. So when we look at the elementary roofs that we did last summer, the final payment on those roofs didn't occur until this fiscal year. So that's why that's in there. Obviously, we have the Cherry Lucas Field. We'll most likely have a split. Half of that money will be paid out this year, half will be paid out in fiscal year, as well as the lights at Eagle Stadium. We'll most likely see half that payment occur this year, the other half next year. So that's built into the forecast. One of the other items that we're seeing an uptick in, and we project it to continue, would be the cost of natural gas as well as the electricity. We're looking at, recently we've had conversations about natural gas because we do purchase that in advance, and we're looking at probably the cost per unit is practically doubled. Okay.
And Brian, aren't both of those utilities purchased through a shared consortium?
Yes, yes. Natural gas is and electricity is. Okay. So the other item is supplies and capital outlay. Obviously, as everyone knows, we're seeing the hits of the inflation cost on the items of school supplies, textbooks, furniture. The big one that we're seeing, the biggest effect right now is in transportation fuel. The cost to run the buses. I can tell you in the months of March and the months of April, there's roughly been about a $50,000 increase in each of those months as it relates to fuel. Obviously, fuel is continuing to rise. Luckily, we're at a point where we'll be in the summer. We won't be running the buses as much. Hopefully, it comes down by the time we get back to school. But we did project a significant increase in transportation fuel next year, just simply because of where things are at right now in the market. So looking at things overall, this year we're showing a deficit spending about $104,000. Obviously, we got a couple months to still go. We hope that changes, but we obviously have a deficit spending shown in 23 through 26. But you can also see on the bottom line the cash balance. We do have a cash balance that does protect us due to that deficit spending that we have over the next couple years, projected deficit. And then the last slide, just a graph to illustrate that. As you can see in the top of the graph, the blue line represents the revenues, the red represents the expenditures. So you see a point in there, 21, 22, where the expenditures cross the revenues. And then the bottom green line is a representation of where the cash balance is projected to go throughout the 5-year forecast. Obviously, it's something we continue to look at, continue to monitor on a monthly basis, and continue to discuss.
If we were to look back, I don't know how many years, we'd see that green. That's an expected curve that green has. That's
Correct.
kind of like the levy cycle. You have the front half of it where we're getting an increase in cash balance, the back half, and then we do another one. So it almost would look like a whole bunch of humps or hills if we were to look at that over time.
Yeah, it would. One of the things that when looking at in past history, one of the big things is the changes that have been made in the foundation formula over the past couple years. I can tell you over the past, I believe, 5 biennial budgets, the state has changed the formula 4 different times. So in some of those earlier years, when we're looking at 15 and 16, we saw significant increases from the changes in the state foundation formula. We're just at a point where the state deems us what they consider a high wealth district, therefore we don't receive those large increases in funding anymore. So yeah, what's been able to keep us off the ballot over the past couple of years. Is a lot of that is as the increase in revenues due to the changes in the state foundation formula.
And just so everyone starts to understand a little bit more about how our schools are funded, I learned this through Brian about 2 or 3 months ago, that we are essentially funded in 3 different buckets. And you saw that 58% real estate taxes, that's paid twice a year. So when you think about how if you're employed by someone and not an entrepreneur, you are paid typically on the 15th and 30th of every month. Well, the schools are paid our biggest chunk twice a year from real estate taxes. The state funding formula that he's mentioning, we're paid in a similar way, twice a month. So 24 installments every year of 32% of our revenues come from the state, twice a month. Twice a year for real estate taxes, and then the other 10% is the various local grant monies as well, correct? That's
Correct.
included in that 10%.
Yeah, when we look at the 10%, the vast majority of that is going to be the TIF payments that we receive from Miami Township and Union Township.
So that's how schools are funded, in those 3 buckets. And as our expenses continue and we pass levies, the levy has a huge deposit into our bank account, and we spend that over time, and eventually school districts go back out to the community to pass another levy. And that's how the majority of school districts are funded, and we're trying to look really hard at how do we control our expenses so that we don't have to pass levies as often at Milford. But Brian has committed to sharing with the community what exactly is behind a future levy, how is it going to be constructed, and how it's going to benefit our community, and I appreciate that.
Sure.
Because there's going to be a lot of transparency when that levy is finally presented to the community, and just know that we're looking hard at trying to keep our expenses as low as possible to keep that levy as manageable as possible. We're currently running a deficit, and any budget that I've been a part of, you don't spend more than you make. And we just need to find a way to just be as smart as we possibly can with every dollar here. And thank you for educating the public as we approach an inevitable vote.
You got it.
Yeah.
I want to clarify something real quick. You said the majority of schools are funded with tax money. All schools are funded with tax money in public schools in Ohio.
No, I said the majority of schools have to go out to the public because they're funded, and then they start to run a negative deficit.
But it's not 100% of schools?
It's not 100% of schools. It is not 100% of schools. That is not true. Yes, that's correct. It's not 100%. So there are schools in the state of Ohio that avoid levies and have been able to run balanced budgets, yes.
In similar wealthy as we're considered?
I don't know exactly the apples to apples. I'm just stating a fact that there are some that do. And in fact, I've offered to Brian some introductions to other treasurers to just learn some of the things that they're doing. And if it's not apples to apples, there's probably some nuggets of insight you can learn from some of the treasurers in those other schools to find out if we can be a little bit better on our balance sheet. I think we all strive to be better stewards of the public's money, and that's what we're going to do. It's not ours.
Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is the motion to approve the 5-year forecast and assumptions as presented.
Okay, we need a motion to approve the 5-year forecast as we have just viewed.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Call a roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mr. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you. Next item of business is the superintendent's business.
Can I make one informational item?
Sure.
Earlier this week, the Ohio Auditor of State did release the district's financial audit, which you can find on the auditor's website. There's also a link on our district website. That fiscal audit for last fiscal year, we did receive a clean opinion with that audit with no findings or no citations. So.
I wanted to follow up that, I don't know if we were invited in the past to the presentations, but that was super helpful to hear from the auditor's office, and I was able to sit in when she delivered the findings, and that opportunity for all of us to sit in and kind of see that, because that's really important to know from the state level, how are they viewing and I want to congratulate you on a good job because we consistently have very, very clean audits, and the things that they find are minor and very fixable, and you're quick to address them.
Thank you. Obviously, all the credit doesn't, there's a number of people that are part of this. They looked at food service this year, so the staff over in the food service, my staff, special ed staff, there's a lot of people that are involved in just making sure that everyone's following the rules appropriately and everything's being accounted for appropriately. So obviously, there's a lot of people involved, so I want to thank them as well.
There are a lot of people involved, but there's only one treasurer, and that treasurer has to keep track of it, and you're way too modest for your own good.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on. Superintendent's business, Mr. John Spicer.
Thank you, President Miranda, members of the board. Under item 1F, asking for your approval of the following policies. This is the second reading.
Okay, we need a motion to approve the policies that are listed on our agenda tonight.
So moved.
Second?
Discussion? Call the roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you.
Under item 2, I do have a middle school update. As you can see under 1 and 2, we are going to have a community engagement on June the 7th. That is a change that was originally on June 2nd. So June 7th is a change. June 2nd is Frontier Days. So I'm not sure how we missed that. Not to mention we are in the parade, so I'm not sure how we missed it, but we moved it. So no worries. So we are, again, we're going to have another community engagement on June the 7th. We'll have it right here. And hope that you can come. SHP, our architect, will be here. And we've already started to engage the junior high staff and the 6th grade staff as well. You have a question?
Just a
Go
comment. Can you make sure you flood all of your communication to the public with that? Some of your
Yes.
Facebook Live messages and
Yes.
others, right?
Absolutely. The Inquirer's here. They're going to publish free ads for us today.
Perfect.
Thank you. I appreciate that, man. SHP and Conger Construction as well. We are asking for you, maybe at the end of the meeting, to discuss a possible work session for the July 18th or July 20th date to discuss the future of the Robbins Building and the weight room out back. We've had some discussions probably for the last 6 months or so, and certainly some prior to our new board member. So we can do that at the end, or do we do that? Do it now? Or do it at the very end?
We do it at the end.
Okay, we'll do it at the end. Thank you. So if you would, indulge me just a little bit. This is our proposed schedule of timeline. We are looking at programming, which is a nice big spreadsheet that makes sure that we get everything in this building that we need. That's something that SHP has worked with us. Thank you, Paul. To make sure that we have that. We're in the schematic design, and as you can see, this goes all the way through the end of August of 25. So we're hoping move in August of 25. These are rough dates. You should not expect to see any kind of earth movement across the street for this project probably for another year. So there'll be that design development, construction documents, et cetera, that will happen. This is just a large 30,000 level foot view. So that's it for that. Next slide, Steve. Thank you. So we did take a tour, a whole day tour of 3 different schools with SHP, some other folks as well, Jeff Johnson. And the first place that we went to was Harrison. This is a middle school. It is 3 stories. May not be able quite to tell that, but it is a 3-story building, 6, 7, 8. It's a beautiful facility. It is green. It is Harrison green, and it was purposely designed that way. I think that we fell in love with this building. It was really nice. I think you could just drop it across the street, make it a little bit bigger, and people would be very happy, but that's not what's going to happen. So next slide, please. That is not what's going to happen, but what I did want to show you is one area that in each of the 3 buildings that we looked at that was of significance, and it caught everyone's attention, and This would be this common stairs area here at Harrison, and very up at the top where all those windows are, that is, ironically, that's a library. That's their media center. And it's a beautiful place. It's open, and of course down below, this is their lunchroom as well. And this was just a space that we all kind of fell in love with. So I'm not giving you a whole lot. I just want to give you a few things from this building. We'll go to the next slide. The next place that we saw was Fairfield Freshman Building. So this is a freshman-only building. A little bit different design, same architect, SHP. Next slide. Again, they had a learning area with the stairs that's connected to their lunchroom, and then you can see they have a really small media center right there, and in the evenings it's like a drop-down gate like you would see in a mall, if you will, so that I don't know why they would do that, and it wasn't stealing books, but I'm sorry for the irony, but that's the case. I mean, that's what they talk about. The one at Harrison that is not. I mean, they just leave the books out. No, I mean, people aren't stealing books, so they're just checking them out. And then to the left, what you can't see is the connection to the gymnasium. And this commons area is very useful. Some of you may have been there for athletic events, et cetera. Here at Fairfield, they did not use that space, the stairs, as much. It's concrete. It felt very industrial. But certainly something that caught our eye. It was one thing that was in this particular, in these 3 particular buildings that still caught our eye, was something that we did like. Next slide.
Could that be used as an educational space?
Yeah, it's absolutely an extended learning area, educational space. I think in the next 1 to 3 years, you're going to hear the ELA, not English Language Arts, but you're going to hear extended learning areas. You're going to hear that a lot. And this one, this particular building was really designed mostly around these extended learning areas with classroom spaces where teachers didn't necessarily have, it wasn't their classroom. They were more on a cart, and then they kind of figured out where they were going to go each day. This was, according to them, being Winton Woods, they were either going to hit a grand slam or they were going to strike out, and they believe with their project-based learning model that they've hit a grand slam, and it's really nice. Next slide, please. And again, this is their area that was sort of a common space. A lot of common areas, extended learning areas. The other unique thing about Winton Woods is that they did not have a central lunchroom. Yeah. So it's distributive dining is what they call it. So just, again, I just wanted to share just a few things, some things that where we've been and what we've been doing. And even though we're in late May, we are going to engage the community with SHP as much as possible. We're going to engage our staff. As Jeff always likes to say, this is the time you ask for every single thing you want in that building. That doesn't mean you're going to get it, but we want you to ask for everything so that we can grasp those ideas and concepts and get them into potentially the design. I think that's it. Yep, thank you.
This is a little bit different than the current junior high that we have, right?
Slightly.
Slightly?
Yeah, just a little bit, just a little bit.
Just amazing to see those things and dream about what we're going to have here somewhere down the road.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I think the other thing, again, to think about, and as that construction begins over there, it's going to be crazy. It's crazy now, but it's going to be crazier. And I think you also have to understand the footprint availability over there is there's just not a lot of space. So we're going to have to go up. I mean, that's the reality. So it's likely to be 3 stories academic for sure.
And John, really quickly about a timeline. We all know construction timelines, they flex. And you had mentioned a year from now is the earliest we could probably expect to see groundbreaking. About how long is the project going to take? And again, no one's committing to anything, but
Sure.
just to share with the group what that may be.
I think Jeff's more the expert, but I think, you're going to see movement in about a year, and then it's going to take through August of 25.
Okay, so about a 24-month construction period?
Yes.
Okay. Did I just steal a little thunder from you?
No, Jeff he likes to get up and talk.
He's stretching his legs.
I don't know about all that, but there's a pretty good chance that we'll be doing some early utility work, like in the early spring, March-ish. That's kind of up in the air. We're in the very early stages of design. But there is a possibility that you'll see some dirt moving as early as maybe March next year. And as Mr. Spicer mentioned, the construction, the building should be complete probably in late spring of 2025. And then we've got to demo the existing junior high, try to rework the Eagles Way and parking and things along those lines. Obviously, we need to move stuff out of the current junior high into the new middle school that'll take place that summer. So actual construction will probably be complete in late spring of 25, and then that summer will be the abatement and demo of the existing junior high as well as moving into that new middle school.
So that fall, we'll have brand-new classes.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Now, there will still probably be some work going on that fall, like site prep and, planting grass and, maybe still a little bit of parking. We'll see. It's real early, but we will be moved into that building in August of 2025. I can promise you that.
Thank you. Any other questions on the middle school? All right, very good. We'll move on to item 3, the calendar approval. So I'm asking for your final approval of the 22-23, 23-24, and 24-25 calendars. As noted last month, we did add some days in, some work days in January, February, also in October. We could not fit the work day in January that's coming up, which for those of you who are not familiar, our high school staff likes to have a balanced semester calendar, and so we're going to try to get them a work day at the end of that semester. It's very helpful for them, but we'll make that happen. The spring break next year does coincide. We're going to move that 1 week. If you recall, that will coincide with Good Friday. And I think it meets some of the needs that Mrs. Nolan asked for, like a 3-day weekend, et cetera, I think, but maybe 1 month in one of those. But it does meet those needs as well. Asking for your approval.
Okay, we need a motion to approve the calendar for 2022, 23, 23, 24, and 24, 25 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Call a roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you.
All right, under item number 4, I am asking for your approval of the MOU with the Milford Education Association. That is a contract extension with them through 24 through 26. That's it. Asking for your approval.
Okay, I need a motion to approve the MEA contract extension for 2 more years.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
I wanted to say thanks to John and the MEA for extending this. I think it is a great deal. It helps us with our 5-year forecast. It helps us know what our budget is going to be. And looking back over the past 16 years, the average has been a 2%, and that's what the teachers were willing to give us. And in this time of inflation, I don't see that it would ever go down. And inflation is not getting cheaper for any of the jobs. So I appreciate you working, and for the teachers who are here, thank you for committing to Milford for 2 more years.
I've made it clear to the board that I oppose the extension. A couple of the reasons why is not because I don't value our teaching community. I think it's premature. We're under contract for 2 more years, and again, the group has heard all of these comments. We're under contract for 2 more years. I was in favor of waiting at least another year. It was met with a little bit of opposition from some of my colleagues. But I just think that as we struggle as a community with some of the forecasted economic woes that this country may be facing over the next 18 to 24 months, I just felt it was a little premature to extend the agreement right now. And I can envision, and Mr. Spicer brought this up in discussion, I can envision being very much for extending the contract, but just waiting another year. And that was where I stood, and that's where I'll stand today, that I just think it's a bit premature.
Yeah, as Emily stated earlier, Mrs. Chestnut, that this does give us a clear view of where we're going to be financially. A 5-year forecast is really going to be a 5-year forecast that we're going to know where we're at. And that's going to be helpful down the road as we get into a levy in 2 or 3 years. We're going to know when we have to pull the trigger, not try to guess. So we've talked about that in executive session a few times. So I think that pretty much covers what I had to say. Any other discussion? Call the roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
No.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
No.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you.
Under item 5, just wanted to reiterate the Citizens Advisory Commission that was pushed out over on Friday of last week. We've had over 70 people at this time express interest. We'll let that sit out there for a little while longer, probably push it out again. I think we've got something scheduled for next week, Krista, maybe to push out again. We're gonna push it out again, but we've got 70 people that have shown some interest already. And so if you're still interested in being a part of this group, please fill out the Google form. There's not room for 70 people, so I just want to be upfront about that. Yes, I am going to pick who is on the committee, but I'm going to try to balance that piece out, who is on and who is not, and just know that, as you can, I'm not going to read it for you, they're going to make suggestions to me and or the board about certain things. One thing could be, for instance, busing. I mean, do we want to change start times? Do we want to go to 2-tiered system? That's something they can look at. We've exhausted, as a district, I think we've exhausted start times and kids' sleep patterns, and I think we know enough about that already. But that's probably not going to be one of those items that we'll discuss, but there will be someone to chair that. That will not be me. I will help facilitate that group, and just looking forward to engaging the community.
I have a question about that. Of the applicants that you have so far, are all the schools represented, or do you not know that yet?
I do not know that already.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I scanned. I didn't look to see what schools district or which of the schools they represented, or if I do know there are business folks. So I do know that there are some business folks, but I do not know. I'm sorry.
Is this good? Go ahead.
Go.
Is this going to be like a two-way street where you're going to have things you're going to bring to that committee, but also they're going to have things that they want to discuss and bring to you? I just want to make sure that that's working both ways.
It can be both ways, yes.
Do you have a goal of what you are foreseeing and how many people will be on that committee? And are you thinking of a percentage of parents versus community members, business people in the community?
Yeah, I think we're definitely looking to
proportions
have
on
a
how
couple
that will work
people, at least a couple people per building. If you do that already, you're already up to 16 potentially. And so we'll get as many as we can. You get much more than 20, 22, 23. It's a little bit hard to manage a group like that. So we'll get as many people on there as we think we can manage and make it work.
Well, just a quick applause for any type of community involvement with things so important. It's a best practice that's been in place for several years at districts around the state, and including this one. I mean, I was able to serve on the CAT meeting with when we were discussing a number of the last time we tried to pass a bond for the middle school. And this is another extension of something like that. So thank you for engaging the community that way. And thank you for being as thoughtful as you can by having everyone represented. No matter who we pick, it's going to be, you've heard this come out of my mouth, and so as Mr. Daniels, it's going to be scrutinized, whoever you pick.
Sure.
But just keeping the community's best interests at heart and getting as as good a cross-section representation as possible is going to be good, so thank you.
The other thing I think is important for folks to know is that it's a 2-year commitment. And so we'll have to also look, once we get the group formed, to decide if a certain percentage of that group is only going to serve for 1 year and then bring some new folks on, and then the other percentage will serve for 2, so that we're not always rotating 20-plus people through the group.
Is
Yes.
this something you foresee just in continuation?
Yes.
For
Yeah, this
for
is
the
not a
future? So you
one-time
wanna-
shot
so you
for
wanna
3 or
maybe
4 months and then we're done. We're going to meet monthly. We're going to commit through August through probably June, maybe not June. We'll see about June and July and folks and their vacations and things of that nature. So yeah, this is continual. This is not just a one and done or one school year and done. This is a continual group.
So eventually you would get on some sort of rotation of staggering where if it's a 2-year, you
We have some
kind
2
of have a
years and some
rotation
1 years to
every.
start with.
Sort of like the school board, you
Yeah.
know, every
Good.
few years, so.
And it's
absolutely.
fair to say that a core requirement is you must live in the district, correct?
Indeed. Indeed.
You know, you said it, I'm gonna tag on to you here. The Milford School District is at their best when they engage people, and if you don't believe that, you weren't paying any attention at the last levy, or the last bond. They told us, you know, the community is not afraid to tell us what they think they want, or what they want. And we just have to be willing to listen to them and try to work within those parameters to make it happen. And we are literally at our best when we do that. And that's, that came out of the CAT team. And even though we had to table it for a little while, till we had money available, we did it, and it passed. And it wasn't easy, but it was done. Morris is out there somewhere. It wasn't easy. But yeah, that it's a great start. I want to see where it goes.
All right, thank you.
That's it for you. Until now. Human Resources Business, Mr. John Sponsor.
All right, thank you, President Miranda. We do have a short video that we'd like to show you. We did recognize our retirees this year. We did have a breakfast for them here in this very room, and we'd like to play this short video for you to honor our retirees.
The numbers keep getting bigger.
Just one time, Steve. We're very honored to have worked with those folks, and we certainly wish them the best as they go into retirement. On to item number 2, administrative personnel approvals. Asking for your approval of items A through E.
Need a motion to approve the administrative personnel approvals, item A through D.
E. Sorry.
That's what I said, E.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you.
Under item 3, certified personnel approvals, asking for your approval of items A through K.
We need a motion to approve certified personnel approvals.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? A lot of people on that list. Call the roll, Mr. Wood.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Hold on one second. Okay, if we're voting all at once for A through,
Okay.
Correct.
okay, well, I'm gonna have to vote no because we couldn't separate things out. So I'll have to vote no on the whole shebang, unfortunately. So no.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
No.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you.
Under item number 4, asking for your approval of the job description for the central registration.
That is item number 4, approval of job description. Need a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you.
Under item number 5, exempt personnel approvals, asking for your approval of items A through E.
Need a motion for exempt personnel approval?
So moved. Second.
Discussion? Call the roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you.
Under item 6, classified personnel approvals, asking for your approval of items A through O.
We need a motion to approve classified personnel.
So moved.
changes.
Second.
Discussion?
Yeah, just a quick reminder.
Yeah, I was getting ready to do that, Jerry.
You guys know what I'm going to say.
Yes, sir.
I'm a broken record every month with these things. We've got various committee meetings that I invite everyone in the audience and everyone watching this to every week, and not every week, every month, and they're the week prior to the board meeting. And when you see us quickly saying yes or no, all of these items have been discussed in committee. And when you see a laundry list of approvals here, we have every opportunity in the committee meetings to ask questions. The administrator is very open to answer those questions. So when you see us saying yes to 50 or so line items, just know that it's not a haphazard yes. We have discussed these and been able to ask questions. And if I've left anything out, Mr. Spicer, please remind the group.
That's it.
Three and a half pages worth of stuff.
Yeah, show up to committee meetings if you're interested in getting more involved. That's my request.
It's a good idea. Any other discussion? Call a roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you.
Under item 7, asking for your approval of the supplemental personnel items A and B.
Need a motion to approve supplemental personnel as listed.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? Call the roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you.
Item 8, asking for your approval of unpaid leave. Item A.
Need a motion to approve unpaid leaves of absence for the employees listed here.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you.
Under number 9, the salary updates, asking for your approval for the salary increase pool.
Need a motion to approve the salary update pool.
So moved. Second.
Discussion.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I've got a question.
I have a question on this. So this says the salary shall be determined by the superintendent and shall not exceed 148,000. Is that discretionary? Each one of those positions could go up to 148,000, or that's the total amount of money you have to split up amongst all
It's a
of
pool
them?
of money, and there is a specific way that is done, and that has been determined past practice. So 2% would be given to anyone based on what the MEA or MCEA would be getting that particular year. So if that particular year they were getting 1%, then they would be guaranteed 1%, and that's it. If it were more, they would get more. The other part to that is the Milford Board in previous years has instituted merit pay. Not me, we being this group, they do not get step increases like teachers or some of the classified staff do. And so therefore, there's merit pay that is in there. Based upon their evaluation, they could get up to an additional 2% for a max of 4%. So that's how that works, and that's how that pool of money was determined, as a max of 4 for all parties.
And anyone who would not get that additional 2% would get 1.5 or 1 or whatever. That is the amount that is not spent there is then returned back to.
Correct. We will return it to Brian.
The top drawer.
Yeah, I had similar questions before. I had to get on a knee over there and ask Brian about this agenda item. So it is a pool. 2% of it is essentially mirrors the teachers' agreement with the union. And the other 2 is merit-based pay, which most are very familiar with. And because without having step function increases for this group, we've got to find a way to reward, top performers, and that's how we do it. So, yeah.
I think it's also important to point out that these merit raises are for all admin minus John, correct?
Yeah, it does not include Brian and I. Does not include us.
Yeah, the people on that list, the exempt staff, which is most of the people that work in this building, the admin and the mental health, they don't belong to either of the 2 unions. Therefore, they're the 3 groups that sits outside.
Okay, any other discussion? Call the roll.
Sorry. Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you.
Under item 10, Article 29 of the teacher's contract, I'm asking for your approval of the MOU with the Milford Education Association.
And that is the document that we received, we've discussed it and we received it this evening here. It's
Correct.
on the table here.
Yep, we have the final version we
Yes.
received this evening, yes.
Need a motion to approve the MOU with the MEA.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Would you like to elaborate on this at all?
Not particularly. I think this MOU, there was a change in March from STRS about retirees, and this will specifically help a particular person able to retire. And I would rather not discuss their specific circumstances, but it will allow them to retire with that change.
We're just simply doing the right thing here. This was a
Absolutely.
This was a compressed decision over 2 days, and it's appropriate not to get into too much detail, but let's just say that I'll be a very vocal yes.
Doing the right thing is very, very well said. Any other discussion? Call a roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you. Now we're going to move on to curriculum and instruction. Superintendent John Spicer.
Thank you, President Miranda, members of the board. Under C&I tonight, number 1, approval to purchase the Norton Anthology, asking for your approval, with a note that we did leave this out front for our community to preview, and we had 0 people sign out or sign in to see and preview this anthology.
So Dave said that he did take a look at it, but he didn't sign it.
I didn't sign in. I didn't sign in.
He
He
did
It has
not.
been reviewed by our.
I
That is-
I went
that
to
is correct.
I went to Mr. Daniels and I did review it. 'Cause I have unlimited time.
Correct.
But this is a book that's going to be used over many years.
Yes, 10 years. This is a great addition for us as well as economical.
Okay. And I got into discussion before I asked for a motion. Can I have a motion to approve the Norton Anthology?
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? Call a roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you.
Under item 3, this is more of an informational item, Amplify ELA, English Language Arts. So after a year-long process,
Did we skip 2?
I did, I'm sorry, thank you. I apologize. Going back to number 2, curriculum pay, asking for your approval of curriculum pay under items A, B, and C.
Okay, need a motion to approve curriculum pay?
So moved.
Second?
Discussion? Call a roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you.
And back to number 3, Amplify ELA. Looks like Paul's ready to go. We'd like to talk about that.
Where's Steve? So following our new tradition of previewing curriculum for 30 days, I was able to use some in-house staff, our MTSS coaches, a special thank you. We have, we previewed 3 products, Study Sync through McGraw-Hill, which was a blended solution in person or and online. We looked at 100% online, which was Common Lit 360, and then we also looked at Amplify ELA. So while Steve finds it, I'll continue to talk a little bit about. So this website went out to all of our 5th, 6th, and 7th grade families this week because they would be the first to see this. So each of them will be able to see it's a blended solution. They'll be able to go up to 6th grade. They will see the all of the units. If you want to drop that down, it should open it up, Steve. They will be able to see that the book that will come in this collection will be the Summer of Mariposas, and then they will have the 6 overarching units, which will be doll and narratives, all the way down to the Summer of Mariposas. And then if you scroll a little further, Steve, each family can see the novel and a description. So that will be the anchor text. They will decide whether they're going to continue to use Esperanza or Bud Not Buddy. Our 6th grade staff loves Bud Not Buddy. So this will allow them to continue to use that time-honored book that we've been using for many years. If you head over to 7th grade, a little bone of contention is that the novel that comes is actually A Raisin in the Sun. That's one that we've been actually reading junior year. So that will drop all the way down to 7th grade. Appropriate, it's a great play. It's a great movie, and these are the 6 overall units that will come. And then we'll flip into 8th grade, which happens to be my favorite, only because the seemingly crossover between what is taught in 8th grade American history. Again, we start working on perspectives and narratives. We do not read Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. We read excerpts, which is actually great because in 9th grade, they will read Romeo and Juliet. So it's really good. You lay that foundation for kids. They also read Macbeth now, so that will stay. And then dropping down, they will have 2 novels. They will have the narrative of Frederick Douglass, and then they will have a graphic novel, which is, it's Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, Grimley's Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. So again, our families can see this. Over in the PDF downloads, you can download every single text that's included. You can't see the text, but you can see where the excerpts come from. And then that top one, Steve, also shows you every novel that we get digitally. We're going to get about 700 digital novels for students. So we've been listening to this notion of student choice. We continue to build on the requests of the board to find paths. this is what we'd like to do. So we will have this up on this website. I'm going to actually send it out again this coming Monday. I'm going to do K5 just so our primary families can see it, and families can contact me with my name or phone numbers on the website if they have suggestions or concerns. One of the nice things is we'll be able to keep our lit circles in 8th grade at the end of the year. It's 100 days, so what it does is it gives teachers 80 days to flex with. You can cover all 100 standards, reading and writing, in 100 days, and still have your anchor text that they've, like Outsiders is the one in 7th grade. That's how we start the year, and it's a big deal, and they can continue that.
I would say thank you, Mr. Daniels. As a fifth grade parent, a current fifth grade parent, I got the email. I will admit that I haven't clicked on too much of the download except the little overview. But this makes it very accessible as a parent to be able to click through and kind of get a lot of that information on what my kids are reading.
So, Mr. Daniels, thank you for listening and integrating choice for our parents. I know that I know there's been a lot of talk about choice over the past few months, and I do believe you're listening. So thank you for that. And I've asked this the last time in the last board meeting with something similar regarding Norton. Is this something that you support and absolutely believe is the right direction for our district?
I'm absolutely thankful that the teachers chose this one because it has the 100-day plan. I think it's great for the district financially. The investment for the district is about $120,000 over a 5-year period. The consumables are very reasonable for our families, so I think financially it's good. It's a quality product. My colleague is going to use the primary version. The CKLA is a pilot. They're huge into the science of reading. They're on the cutting edge. They're a little more expensive, but it is the right thing at the right time. And the reason I say that is our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers have literally created everything every day. And as the classroom has changed in terms of ability, they can spend less time creating and more time looking at what student needs and kind of pull in some of the resources. So I think for them, the 6th grade teachers were thrilled. 7th and 8th grade were thrilled because they have choice. So I think I am thrilled with our professionals, and I'm thankful that the vetting, because Jerry, we do the vetting on the front end. If they bring us something, and I'll vet it with the vendor, with the content standards, with everything to make sure it matches what we need to do in a year. This hits all those check marks.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. All right, we're going to move on to item number 4. We have our fee schedules for next year, asking for your approval of the 3 fee schedules as listed.
Need a motion to approve the fee schedules as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you.
And finally, under item 5, we're asking for your approval of the OSBA policy review. That is a premium service where they will review our documents. It's a 12-month term, and the cost is $11,000.
Need a motion to approve the OSBA policy review.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll.
Go ahead, Emily.
I know, Dave, we're all trying to get through. I would just like to comment quickly that it's been a while.
It's been a very long time since we've had a policy review like this, where we've gone through and making sure that everything matches what it should. And so as Paul runs our policy committee with Jen Schaefer, so they will meet with individual departments as those policies affect those departments. And so it has been quite some time since that's been done. I would say more than 5 to 7 years is the last time it was done, for sure.
One of the bonuses of going with OSBA is that's who we used last time, and they have some history, and they have some pieces that we didn't get to last time that we can kind of wrap up and continue.
Yes, and we're currently using the OSBA policies now. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it was just a comment. I was going to ask you to elaborate a little bit more. We're overdue to review our policy manual, and the investment to do this is a wise one, just to make sure that we're following all of what the state recommends of us. We don't want to be out of line in any way, so we discussed this openly at our policy and personnel meeting, and I'll be a resounding yes here.
You know, we actually started talking about this last year when Mr. Daniels was going through about 1,000 every meeting. So it is overdue, and we need to move forward with it. Now, call the roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you. Now we move on to business operations. Mr. John Spicer.
Thank you, President Miranda, members of the board. Asking for your approval, number one, for a roof repair contract at the high school with TrueCraft.
Okay, I need a motion to approve the roof repair contract for the high school.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Am I right in saying that this roof repair will be done in 2 parts?
Well, this one section that is being approved, if you'll click on that, Steve, if you would, you can see it. And I'll let Jeff kind of finish up as well. So that section of the high school will need to be repaired, section A.
So it's kind of hard to tell, but the darker area of the high school is the old junior high school. That roof is, I don't know how old it is, but it's old. The area in red is deteriorating pretty bad. We looked at potentially doing a complete re-roof of that entire, it's about 46,000 square feet, but I can't get it here. So what we're looking at doing, this repair is about a 5 to 10 year solution. And then we're going to be working towards, and this work will be done this summer. But we couldn't get contract approval and everything in order to get the materials to get everything done this summer. So we're going to be looking at doing, asking the board for approval after some due diligence and things to look at the balance of that 46,000 square feet in the summer of '23. So that's kind of the 2 parts.
Jeff, has the roof failed prematurely, or is it in line?
Oh, it's probably lasted longer than it should have. My guess is, and I don't know this for sure, I believe that section of the roof was probably put on in 1989, which would make it 33 years old. So.
And just as a question, when we had the bond in 2019 that included lots of things, this was part of that, was it not correct?
That is correct.
So if we ever run a bond for refurbishing of the high school, this would be mostly subtracted, partially subtracted, totally subtracted?
It depends on when that would happen. So my intention, again, you know, moving into next year, this is again about a 5 to 10. This is not a complete new roof. We're not tearing it down to deck and putting a brand new roof in. This is, we're scraping off the gravel. It's a long process with a felt back DPDM, but it's not a 30-year warranty roof that we're doing right now. That's one of the reasons we're only doing this small section instead of doing that entire amount. What I'm proposing, and will be, again, coming back to the board through building and grounds and whatnot eventually, would be to do a complete new roof on the rest of that, which would be a 30-year solution, and then potentially 5 to 10 years from now, we might need to come in and address this section.
But we are addressing this through the general fund as opposed to going back to the taxpayer and asking for more funds to do this.
Yes.
Just want to be clear on that.
Thank you, Jeff.
I get lost in the middle. We do have a motion
Yeah,
and
a
a second
motion
for
and a
this,
second.
right? Call the roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you.
We're about to see how good this roof is with that rain.
We are. Under item 2, we are asking for your approval of the SHP contract. That is our architect for the new middle school.
We need a motion to approve the SHP contract. Is
So moved.
Second.
discussion? Call the roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you.
Under item 3, asking for your approval of the resolution for the Board of Education to declare student transportation impractical.
Okay, we need a motion to approve a resolution for the Board of Education to declare student transportation impractical.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
John, how many are on that PDO? How many students?
Oh, this is actually the resolution that allows me to approve that, because there's a new timing issue that we would have to call a special board meeting for you to come in and approve some people impractical, and so this just allows me to do that, and then we bring it back to the next board meeting. So you would still approve it, but it would just allow that to happen. That's what this is.
I think you miss it by 7 or 8 days, worst case.
Yeah, the state put some timing in as far as how quickly you have to approve it.
And there's no sense in holding it up for the next meeting, so I get it. Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
Any other discussion? Call the roll.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you. This brings us to our second public participation section. Do we have anyone?
I do have one. Jenny Zent?
I do need to caution, the policy states that you cannot continue on the same conversation that you have, and you have to go last, but if there's only one, you are first and last. So.
We have 3.
Okay. We have 3?
We have 3.
Well,
We
the
have 3
two
now.
just turned them in.
Oh, excuse me.
When he
He
called
didn't
in,
see
it was
that,
2.
but there's 3 now.
There are 3 now, so.
Yes, I say let Mrs.
You're,
Zent go, 'cause
you're,
there's still time.
you are there, go ahead.
For sure.
We will allow everyone to speak, so it's a matter of 3 minutes.
Oh, it's not on yet, sorry.
All right. All right. Thank you for supporting parent choice and voting to keep In the Time of the Butterflies in the curriculum. A few years ago, a situation took place that shook me to the core. Fast forward to this fall, my daughter is now in the junior high. An incident took place, and I immediately emailed the principal and Mr. Spicer. I want the board to know that Mr. Spicer met with me to discuss the situation for an hour and a half. I requested to visit the junior high so I could see for myself exactly what type of environment my daughter was immersed in. Later that day, I sent him the following email. Mr. Spicer, thank you again for taking the time to meet with me today. You have restored my faith in Milford schools. I know today was probably not the best use of your time, but it was very worthwhile for me. I needed to see for myself what the environment is like at the junior high. After speaking with Mr. Wells, it is apparent the administration cares about the kids. It's also apparent that you care about the staff based on your interactions with them. You seem to know all of them and asked each one of them how they were doing. This shows me that you truly care about them as individual people. I know that makes a huge difference in their morale. If they feel cared about, they will in turn care for their students and go above and beyond for them. This is so important. What I learned today is that I can trust that Chloe is in good hands at the junior high. I know she may occasionally witness inappropriate behaviors, but it's not as rampant as I had imagined. I also know the staff will deal with these behaviors in a kind and professional manner. Thank you again. And I know I can be a very difficult parent, and I'm very opinionated, and I voice my concerns. I just want to thank everyone that in the district that puts up with me. And I'm sorry for all the time that I spend with my concerns. Anyway, thank you.
Paul Chambers?
All right, Paul Chambers, 990 Business Route, or Business 28. I actually didn't plan on speaking tonight to the, probably the gracious applause of a couple people here. But I actually, when I showed up, and I'm just going based off what I've witnessed today, and thank you to the board again. I do thank you every month for allowing me to speak. I also want to thank Superintendent John Spicer for reaching out. We had some good conversation. I think we can have some more. If anyone is not aware, I've been speaking on the last couple months at the school board meetings about bullying in our district. And although the lady that just spoke, I think that that's a great step in the right direction, I still do think that there are a lot of children in our school buildings that face bullying, face issues with with curriculum, that are afraid to speak up about it. Funny, we mentioned Romeo and Juliet, and I was sitting there thinking as some of our school board members were talking, and I remember being in 9th grade and hoping and praying they didn't pick me to be Romeo, so I didn't have to at least fake the kiss scene or whatever, there are things that make you uncomfortable. And I just want our public to realize that as I'm sitting here, and each month I'm coming up here trying to advocate for bullying, against it. Let me reiterate that. I'm a science and social studies major. I am not an English major. But to advocate against bullying, we do have to do better. And we have to start at the top with adults. We came in today wanting to speak. And if you want to speak, you have to pick up a yellow or a green card. I'm not colorblind. And hope that you can get on and speak in front of everyone, in front of your peers and in front of the board. This is the last line of defense in our democracy of a district with the school board or with the schools to make changes or to keep things. And that's great. It was great. We were mentioning democracy, and that's what the great country we live in today. But I also saw some of that bullying. And it always starts with the adults. It always starts at the top. And if we don't start talking better to our children and teaching them how to speak, how to act in public, I witnessed a couple of our board members not be able to say what they wanted to say today because of people speaking out. And everybody that came up, I do want to commend Ms. Fox for her message today. It was a very heartfelt thing, and it was good to hear. But also there's the passion that was in this room today. And you got to have that passion a little bit more. There's only half this room filled right now. And most of these people were not here the last couple months. So please be more active with your children. You were. Be more active with your children. And I will continue to advocate against bullying in our district.
Thank you, Mr. Chambers.
Thank you.
Annette Zimmerman. Excuse me.
Just to confirm, if I understood you right, I can't continue what I was talking about before.
You can only speak on your topic one time. Okay. So if it's the same topic, then based on board policy.
Thank you.
Sure.
So we are complete. Okay. The next board meeting, regular board meeting for the Milford Exempted Village School District is Thursday, June 16th, 2022 at 6 p.m. in this room. Now have a final opportunity for the board for conversation.
I just want to say real quick, it's been really fun to see all of the senior traditions on Facebook and everywhere. It was really cool to see some of the biking video. I think that's a wonderful tradition, and I had a lot of fun seeing the slip and slide video as well.
I believe that's a new one, is it not? Yeah, it was pretty cool. I was trying to figure out where the hill was. It took me a while. Yeah, but that was cool. I wanted to come over myself. Any other comments?
Just quick thanks again to all of those that are retiring from the district. I know we had a presentation, but just know that we talk regularly about all the sacrifice and dedication for all of those that have spent so many years with us. When I see a 4 in front of a couple of those folks. It's amazing. So thanks to all that's given what they have, that's stepping away from our district.
Anyone else?
If I may, because I know you got good news to report on.
Yes, I do.
I need a work session on July 18th or 20th.
18th or 20th?
Yes.
Yeah.
After, those are weekday, they'll be afternoon or evening?
Probably evening. I mean, you decide that.
Okay, not
But
workday.
I think evening, if you want to make it a session that folks can come to.
And you want to discuss the topic, or?
Yes, it's the Robbins Building and the weight room. That's the discussion. So what are we going to do with it? SHP and Conger will be here, the construction management group, to discuss efficiencies, et cetera, with what's next. So
I'm available either.
Jeff's coming up to the microphone.
I
gave him a quick point. I don't know yet, but I can figure out quickly.
I would prefer it be the 18th, because we get real busy the day before the board meetings with
It's true.
final clarifications and talking about any last-minute agenda changes. So I'd like to get that out of the way before, if we could.
Okay. Any questions for Jeff?
So Jeff, we've talked about this openly. During this work session, are you going to be presenting some of the options we talked about?
Yeah, that's the whole idea, is to kind of confirm budgets. You know, what does it look like if we don't do anything and those buildings stay there, and how does that affect our new middle school? How does it affect parking and site circulation? What are some of the costs associated? Because even if we leave them there, there's some costs associated. You know, the utilities come out of the current junior high, which is obviously eventually going to be gone. You know, and then what are some options and efficiencies that we might have to replace those on the same timeline as when we're doing the middle school? And so SHP will be there, Conger will be there, and we'll have a presentation, and obviously we want to be able to speak to, you know, we've talked about this in building and grounds for a while now, and we thought it was best to have a work session with all 5 board members. Public can come, ask questions, and, you know, we'll kind of present that, and then if you guys have any questions, we'll go through that and try to answer those, because we're going to be getting to the point here by, you know, late summer that whichever direction the board decides to go, we need to know, because we need to design around whatever that decision is.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, and I just wanted just two comments. Last levy that was passed in this district was May of 13.
Correct.
May of 13. So I think people need to know that. We've talked about it the last 2 years, and certainly the last year before the bond. So May of 13, that's very important for folks to know. I would like to thank my staff, all the people that I work with on a daily basis, and all the work that they do. I can only tell you the amount of hours they put in, but also just the entire district, our teachers, our classified staff, certified, everybody has been grinding it out this year, and they are tired. And they've put a lot of work in for your kids, your grandkids, whatever, and I'm just grateful for everything that they do.
Are we picking a work session date now?
Ideally,
I think
yes.
it was the 18th was what was,
Yeah,
I thought I heard,
The 18th
sorry,
work.
July
I
18th.
mean,
Yes, for me.
yeah, either way, you're in a hard place, but we'll make it later in the day, and that hopefully can work.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I think late day is good. Six-ish, seven,
Yeah,
six.
six-ish.
Yeah, that's fine.
July 18th, 6 p.m.
Anything
Thank
else?
you. No, sir.
Anything else from anybody here? Always like to have the good news report last, and it's the last thing that if people wait all the way through a 2-hour and 55-minute board meeting, they get to hear all the good news before they go home or go to sleep. Good news report for today. The biggest news around campus is that the ECC All-Sport Trophy was won by Milford High School by about 6.5 points. Congratulations to all of our fall, winter, and spring athletes. It wasn't just one team in the spring that made it happen. We had good success in the spring, just like we did in the winter, just like we did in the fall. Softball had a miraculous turnaround. They lost a game and thought they were out of first place. And then the team that beat them, we beat them back, and somebody else got them too, and we ended up winning that. We weren't sure that was going to happen, and that's great. They ended up winning league championship there. We had girls track had a miraculous performance. They lost the league meet by 1/2 of 1 point. It was that close. It was a dead heat between two runners that got us there. The boys lacrosse ended up finished second to Loveland this year. Another great season. They had 7 kids on the all-district team, which is really exciting. Baseball and tennis both finished 4th. Got some young talent. Tennis is up and coming, and baseball is, I believe, still a little bit young. I think their best days are ahead of them next year. And we got to also see Tom Kilgore get his 400th win as a coach. He's retiring this year, so what a nice way to go out with 4-0 something, 406, 407. I'm not sure what it ended up being. Girls lacrosse ended up in 5th place. I think they're an up and coming team too, and I think we look forward to great things from them in the next year. And that takes care of the all sport. Wonderful accomplishment. I know I've talked about that at every meeting since February, and it's really exciting. And it was really cool because I was not in town, and I had coaches texting me and telling me what the scores were and how things were going. The coaches were really into it, and that's the way you want them to be. The Fine Arts Fair, we had that at the end of April. There were over 2,000 people there for works of art. There were 1,500 works of art, and they also had the theater program was also doing kind of a cabaret in the auditorium, which was really cool. I went in there and just kind of stayed for a while. I eventually got out to see the artwork, but that was kind of mesmerizing for me. Also, the high school drama departments announced their 2 productions for the 22-23 season. They're going to do the annual Putnam County Spelling Bee in September, and they're going to do what was explained to me as a unique production of Jekyll and Hyde, where I think the audience may actually get to be on the stage. Is that correct? Yeah, that's good. It sounds kind of out there, but always trying to find new ways to do things. Bands revving up for their summer practices. Their new show is titled Masquerade. 150 people out there, and we expect to have good things from them and good results. We had a large presentation on VEX Robotics. Suffice it to say that they are doing great and continue to do great and get better every year. Maybe we'll win an international championship here one of these days. We also talked about the film crew for esports being here. I'm looking forward to seeing that and hopefully getting that up on the website so everyone can see that and be excited about that. Dates to remember, not so many. 2 days from today, okay, Amanda, relax. 2 days from today at 4 o'clock at the Centos Center, we will be handing out the diplomas to the class of 2022. That's an exciting time. It's one of my favorite things as a board member to get to see those kids be so happy and smiling and throwing their caps in the air, so that's really cool. And 2 other things that the band will be in. The band is going to be, of course, in the Frontier Days Parade. They're in it every year. That is June the 2nd. But also Memorial Day, they march in a Memorial Day parade down by Kroger in the downtown area and march over to the cemetery and do a ceremony over there. That is Monday, May 30th. So that's all I have. Thanks for listening, and we'll probably be a little bit less during the summer, but fall is right around the corner. Oh, there was one other thing. I'm sorry. I don't know how I missed that. Flight night was a huge success. Over 500 people. I saw Mrs. Moore here earlier. There she is. She's back there waving at me. She and her husband Todd do a great job in running that program. It's a huge money maker for the athletic department through the athletic boosters, and there were over 500 people there, so that was a nice night. That's all I've got. So, we are going to executive session, and the purpose of the executive session is to enter into the executive session for the purpose of investigating of charges and complaints against an employee, official, licensee, or student. We will not be returning here. We will be returning long enough to vote to adjourn. There's absolutely no need for you to stay here unless you have nothing else to do at 9 o'clock at night. I need a motion to move into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
The discussion will handle in there, so call the roll one more time.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you.